Chapter 21. If you notice any errors, please feel free to give me constructive feedback. English is not my first language, so if you notice any mistakes, please mention them in the comments section at the end of the chapter. I do not own Overlord. All property rights belong to their respective creators. Let's begin the story. Chapter 21. Muspelheim. Yggdrasil. Earth. January of year 2133. Overlord verse. The eternal flying garden of Utopia, Avalon. A soft flash of magic illuminated a small space at the foot of a mountain surrounded by volcanoes. Kai, who had teleported on the mountain, adjacent to a cave, inspected his surrounding for players and headed inside. He stepped inside, ignoring the faint chill of a cry from bats of the cave with scorching interior. His boots echoed gently on stone as he made his way forward, weaving through tight corridors until the path opened into a junction. The ceiling expanded. Before him, the path branched off in 5 paths, each corridor leading to a room containing treasure, with a guardian golem guarding them. The path that led to them, filled to brim with traps that could kill even level 100 players. And this was the place with the weakest security from the place he wished to travel. Looking around at the branching paths, he stood at the intersection and mused, those treasure rooms will mislead the spells and items that are used to find the treasure or route to traverse dungeons and mazes. We have set up quite a number of traps and yet, no one has even managed to find this place. Much less invade our guild, and sighed. Well, that is also a great fortune in its own right. As they say, a blessing in disguise. Kai stood at the center of the intersection and closed his eyes, before muttering softly, the door to Avalon is the door that leads to eternal utopia, Agartha. The stone beneath his feet glowed faintly, a teleportation magic array lighting up, one among dozens of others hidden across the chamber. Concealed among many other that were traps, to divert the attention of attackers from it. With a blue glow, he vanished. Kai's view changed to finding himself inside a small hole with no light, and with the quiet dripping of water sound beside, occupying his ears, and with a feeling of darkness encroaching on him. While it was a simple illusion, it did its job. With his vision snatched, at least of those of who did not possess night vision and items to enhance their night vision. He stepped forward, brushing aside moss-covered vines that veiled a natural opening. As he passed through the hole, the darkness receded. What greeted him was no longer a cave. A vast subterranean cavern unfolded before him, lit by soft, ethereal light pouring down from unseen sources above. Bioluminescent vines twirled around towering stone pillars. Crystals shimmered faintly beneath the water of a quiet lake. And floating above it all, perched upon nothing, was the soaring silhouette of Avalon, now his guild base. Despite the artistic view that could compel most to drop their guard, mesmerized by the view, the place was filled with one-time summoning arrays that summoned variety of monsters and mercenary to attack the invaders along with various other traps. Kai walked slowly, crossing the stone path that led to a golden door resting beside the lake. Runes flickered along its frame. I have yet to find any job class that can use runes, beside the decoration stickers that we can purchase from few shops in some towns. He mused as he entered through the door. I have made it possible for few of our NPCs to be able to create those stickers and add cosmetic effects of the runes on items, but I wonder how it would function in the new world. And he stepped inside the Garden of Avalon. The air changed instantly, warmer, fragrant, like springtime. Though he could not feel the wind caressing his skin, as the game did not link their sense of touch in the virtual reality of Yggdrasil. He stood in the center of the garden only briefly, before slipping on a ring from his inventory and activating its teleportation function. Less than the ring of Vanitas Regnum Anta, greater than allowed for free teleportation within the guild base. And his surroundings blurred again. This time, he arrived on a small floating platform, partially embedded into the waterfall, the only stable land in the midst of a massive, vertical cascade. Water thundered down in both the direction, creating an unbroken curtain of white that stretched to infinity. Only a hanging bridge connected the platform to the main landmass of the 10th floor, the largest floor of the guild, expanded beyond the capacity with cash shop, guild store and some string pulling from the behind the scenes by both Kai and Shoko. Kai took a breath. The view hadn't changed. He felt butterflies fluttering in his stomach, every time he laid his eyes on the view. Across the waterfall and the bridge was the city, Vanitas Regnum Anta Guild City. Buildings stacked in chaotic but strangely charming rows. Bridges ran through the air and ground, towers connected to sky, open-air market zones dotted with lamps and cobblestone patterns, crafted individually by players who cared more about creativity than optimization. The shops whose purpose remained unknown with no stream of customers. There were castles. Too many castles. Everyone who joined the guild had taken some part of the 10th floor and declared it their dominion. Several members had even claimed chunks of terrain and started building replica buildings of entertainment, food places, magic facilities, weapon stores, theater, opera house, malls, gardens, parks, restaurants, hotels, research towers and sports complex. The city housed almost every facility that one could think of. None of them followed a central plan. The city layout was a mess, and chaotic. Yet there was an underlying order that the buildings and other structures followed. The presence of order and chaos puzzled Kai every time he laid his eyes on the city, but he didn't give much thought and accepted the way city was and was even happy with it. Kai's eyes were drawn toward the far end, where a large castle towered, the largest structure in the floor. Its gates closed, flanked by giant golems. Their size dwarfing most boss monster of Yggdrasil, except for a select few. Kai activated another shortrange teleport, landing softly on the rooftop of that very castle. From there, he could see it all. The waterfall, the mist, the city stretching outward. And just beyond it, floating behind the central palace, a dome-shaped structure hovered above the waterfall. Inspired by the underground tomb of Nazarik's meeting chamber and modified for practicality with many other facilities added, it was their gathering spot for meetings before the raid or for any decisions. Kai had designed it himself. While he had hired a few of the best designers and artists from his company, who had joined his guild for a short time and helped him build it according to his and Hitoshi's design. Though Hitoshi and Kindred Star had been against it at first, but after calculating the time it would require them to take on such an arduous task, with their indifferent guildmates who were busy with their building and only planned to make it more function-oriented and were satisfied with initial palace that the Avalon was, unlike himself and Kai, as both wished to design the guild in a grandiose design and were not fully satisfied with the initial design of the Avalon. They speculated it would have taken them more than 4 or 5 years, with them working in their free time, aside from their job and playing Yggdrasil to explore, complete quests and battle. Kai exhaled slowly, reminiscing the old days. Their guild had expanded with new players joining through referral of old players of guild, and with housing 5 world champions, they had managed to rotate teams to handle dungeons, raids, hunting and mining efficiently. From a scattered band of oddballs to 100 players guild, filled with friends, classmates, casuals, and a few obsessed crafters. Most didn't care for power builds. Few had no combat strength at all, and most roleplaying with their desired class and race. And with few who had disastrous builds, meant solely for roleplaying. Most of them were uninterested, lazy, or maybe with their horrendous skills to design and create NPCs, compared against the ones created by Kai and Hitoshi, they had left it for Kai and Hitoshi to handle. Kai sighed. He looked over at the race track with cars parked off the tracks. There were multiple race tracks aside from the one for cars. The other tracks for horses, bikes, carts, and a track expanding across the city for flying mounts. It had all started when Kai and Hitoshi had managed to build a mini-computer inside the game using only game features. Well, calling that a computer is a bit of an exaggeration, but they were computers that performed large number calculations with hexanumbers. Getting items and designing them to work together and function as logic gates was a bit hard, but we somehow managed it. The most difficult part was the flip-flops for performing multiple calculations. Yet, our hard work paid off. He mused, looking over at AF1-like car. From there they used Wish upon a Star, throwing loads of money at the cash shop. Neither Kai nor Shoko nor Manabu hesitated after the mini-computer had been built by Kai and Hitoshi. They all poured resources to create what he now witnessed before him, shocking many players in the guild and even a few devs from what they had pulled off, using enchanting and blacksmithing to create a mini-computer or calculator with memory retention feature. Kai smiled happy at the progress, but with a few players who had left the game, reminded him of the era that closed in, the end of Yggdrasil was drawing near. Shaking his head of such thoughts, he teleported inside the meeting room, located inside the flying dome-like structure behind the castle. Ready to join the meeting, as they prepared for the big raid. Abyss. World enemy raid, abyssal void that which lies outside the reaches of gods and Yggdrasil. World enemy, sovereign of original sins, demon of the abyss. A silent fog veiled the sky, if it could be called one. In this place, no stars hung above, only endless void stretching in a shade darker than black. There was no sky. A realm outside Yggdrasil, as per the lore Kai read when they had unlocked the event. After they had completed through the 10 archangels of Saphira, world enemy raid and also cleared the lords of the 7 deadly sins, under the specified time limit for each raid, they had unlocked a hidden event, a new world enemy. Sovereign of original sins, demon of the abyss, a world enemy said to possess the combined strength of the lords of the 7 deadly sins and the 10 archangels of Saphira. Kai mused. With the new quest unlocked, they had received the key of abyss. A key that opens the doors of the abyss. The key of abyss unlocked the doors of abyss, but it is a single-use item, and if we were to fail the raid, we will have to again clear the raids and meet the requirements, if we are even allowed another chance. Kai mused, gazing at the demons lunging toward him to be only crushed by the tyrant's hands, that he summoned. A 10-floor dungeon, with each floor ruled by a primordial demon, and at the end awaiting us is the master of these primordial demons. The sovereign of original sins, a supposed outer god, born abomination from the shadow of the progenitor, origin and creator of the outer gods. This was added after the outer gods event, at least that's what Kayaba said. Players have to first complete the outer gods pack and should have cleared the world enemy raid of archangels and lords of the 7 deadly sins under a specific time to unlock this raid. This is quite a painful raid with probably the most number of requirements to attempt this raid. Moreover, the time is also hidden. Kai mused, venturing inside the abyss along with his guildmates. Clearing the 9 floors with each ruler of the floor, whose strength surpassed boss monsters of high-level dungeon and lacking just a fraction of strength for each of them to equal the lords of the 7 deadly sins and the 10 archangels of Saphira. Against all odds, Kai and his guildmates with a very large supply of potions, items and artifacts had come to this raid. Now, they stood before a door. Unlike the ornate, dramatic gateways that had marked each floor, this one was simple. A plain obsidian archway, set into a slab of cracked stone that floated in the void. Less than you are about to enter the 10th floor, throne of abyss within myriad palace greater than. Less than world enemy encounter, sovereign of original sins, demon the abyss greater than. Less than you may not re-enter once defeated. Greater than. Kai stood at the front, gaze fixed on the gate. We've burned almost all our supplies, Hitoshi muttered behind him. You sure about this? Imagine the loot, Wandering Soul said with a faint grin. Zeroth laughed. Yes. Let despair become a crown we carve ourselves. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Kai stepped forward. And the door opened. Chapter 22. Kurenai Estate. Tokyo, Neo Japan. Earth. Year 2134. Overlord verse. Kai groaned as the firm yet respectful voice of his personal butler, Konami, echoed through the grand bedroom. Master Kai, it's time to wake up. He buried his face deeper into the blanket, grumbling under his breath. Just 5 more minutes. I'm afraid 5 minutes passed 10 minutes ago, Master. With a resigned sigh, Kai turned over and blinked at the ceiling. The pale rays of artificial sunlight diffused through the tall curtains inside his room. His body still ached slightly, a ghost of fatigue from yesterday's late-night gaming session, a daily routine now. Dragging himself out of bed, he trudged into the bathroom, letting the shower's heat chase away the remnants of sleep clinging to his skin. As the warm water cascaded over him, Kai leaned his forehead against the cool marble wall, allowing himself a moment of peace. Back to reality, he mused, watching the mist gather on the glass door. Or whatever passes for it these days. I'll have to get things sorted out fast, now that the game is in its last phase. He mused, planning for the coming months. The journey till now was great and I hope that the remaining time also passes quietly. Refreshed, and with a towel lazily slung over his neck, Kai returned to his room, quickly dressed, and followed Konami. They walked on the familiar path through the corridors of the estate, eventually arriving at the opulent dining hall. The long, polished table stretched across the room like a runway of silence, devoid of chatter or presence, or so it was supposed to be. He paused at the entrance, letting his eyes scan the room again. Unlike the usual empty hall, a boy who appeared to be in his mid-teens was seated at the table, engrossed with his breakfast that he only spared a glance at Kai's direction before he continued eating. The sight caused Kai to sigh, before he followed Konami to his seat and began consuming his breakfast. The two brothers are stepbrothers engrossed in their little world, indifferent to each other's presence. Having completed his breakfast, Ryuga got up and left the dining hall, without acknowledging Kai's existence all throughout his meal. Causing Konami to let out a sigh, at the enmity he received from his brother. So, Konami, father and mother aren't at home. He muttered, pausing his meal. Yes, they are abroad to attend a party with one of the clients, hoping to expand the business. At least, that's what I heard this morning from the secretary, while I was inquiring about the future prospects of your business venture. Konami spoke, earning a nod from Kai. My relation with Ryuga was good, at least I believed it to be. While He was always shy around me, but he used to greet me and smile at every opportunity. From his mother's interference, he did not approach me as much, while growing up, but this, I am not sure. This distance and indifference, I guess it all started after I lashed out and destroyed the showcase of my trophies. He mused. Well, I have no enmity toward him or this family. Despite my rantings, it has given me everything that I could hope for in this world and even made my journey in Yggdrasil a smooth sailing one. I am not even sure if I can ever repay this favor. He pondered with a wry smile. Done with his breakfast, he stepped out and logged in Yggdrasil as usual. Later that evening, the elevator doors opened with a muted chime, and Kai stepped into the dim corridor leading toward the underground parking section. The concrete floor gleamed under recessed lighting, and the hum of cleaning robots echoed faintly from a distance. At the far end, near the door marked vehicle parking, stood a familiar figure, arms folded, posture stiff as always. Konami sighed, looking over at Kai. Even in a charcoal gray suit, the old-fashioned butler glasses and neatly combed black hair, his expression, as ever, hovered somewhere between concern and disapproval. You're going alone, Konami stated, not asked. Kai glanced up at him as the motion sensor unlocked the parking door. Didn't realize someone was going to accompany me. I am your personal butler. When you wish walk into sketchy addresses at this hour, I will of course appear. It's instinct at this point with your whimsical nature. Although, I do not mind accompanying you for the peace of my mind. Kai exhaled, amused, and tapped his comms badge to disengage the door lock. I'm 24, Konami. I don't think there would be a lot of men or women for that matter, out there, who wish to or can bait me with candy or something. Kai muttered, looking around the garage, looking for a car. While completely ignoring Konami's last statement. Konami's eyes narrowed, as he sighed. Come on Konami, Kai continued, shrugging. Be a bit flexible, and in the worst case scenario, I disappear. That's the least of the desired outcomes, for you or me. I will stall or fight against them than let them take me. Disappearing would lock me from Yggdrasil. I can't miss the daily dose of adrenaline from Yggdrasil. That is not comforting. Konami muttered, while he was worried for Kai's safety but was just as worried about him locking himself within a game, completely locked out from reality. He placed a hand lightly on Kai's shoulder as he passed. You have your phone turned on, correct? Nodding toward Konami, he sets his sight on a hypercar and slides inside it. With fuel cars now obsolete, it's either electric or hydrogen, with electric cars a bit on the pricier side. Kai mused and held the steering, before turning off the autodrive function and puts the car in eco mode. Konami, just look at how cautious I am, and do not worry about me, and you know me, I would never risk my life. Kai waved a lazy two-finger salute over his shoulder, and drove the car outside the building. As he heard muffled voice of Konami. Well, with the price of electric cells these days, it's to be expected. He mused. The city's edge glowed faintly in the distance, neon signboards and lights turned on, the infamous nightlife of the Neo-Japan. He wished to roll down the window, and enjoy the cold breeze, but with the condition of the environment, he didn't wish for his remaining lifespan to get divided. While the pollution did subtract lifespan in 21st century, it was quite different in the 22nd century. The tires skid against the road, as he exited the street of his home. Kai observed the silence surrounding near his home, without any other building in its proximity. Then, click. The ambience of the vehicle, the color combination of the car's interior changed and the car artificially roared, as the infotainment display of the car went through an animated slideshow, hypermode on. Kai's lips tugged into a smile. I don't know what it is, he mused, tightening his grip on the wheel. But every time I drive alone on an empty road or ride for the matter, he mused. I always press on the pedal till its absolute limit and let the air rush against my skin. The car shot forward. Konami, who remained at home, looked worriedly at the warning notification he received on his tablet. I suppose this can be both an advantage and disadvantage with my home being a bit far from the city. He mused, while racing on an empty road. With Yggdrasil nearing its end. I guess all my plans will have to speed up. With the fruit from the fallen world, I can be rest assured of the power advantage, once I am in the new world. He mused, humming to the music he had turned on, a while back. He slowed down his speed by a bit, as he reached the intersection that led to the city, with other vehicles joining him on the road. But the question still stands, which world enemy should I choose? He pondered. The fruit from the fallen world can be used only once, and upon activation, the user is allowed to challenge any world enemy that they wish to replace, and survive the battle for 10 minutes without dying. Upon failure to do so, the world item is lost. But the selected world enemy should have already been defeated by the player with or without his teammates, prior to challenging the world enemy. He mused. The Demon of the Abyss is a good choice. But the question is, can I survive his attacks? He is said to be and is stronger than lords of 7 deadly sins, 10 archangels of Saphira, Fafnir, Sutur, 8 dragons, Odin or any other gods, and outer gods that were available for us to fight against. That's from my personal experience. And among the outer gods, the strongest were Cthulhu and the Demon of the Abyss, both of them almost equal in difficulty. While the Demon of the Abyss surpasses him by a bit. With him being part of outer god integration pack with other world enemies to connect the lore and plot, as Kayaba worded it. He should be the ideal choice. Moreover, he can summon those primordial demons, ruler of 9 floors before the bottom of the abyss, and not to mention revive them. Though it was said that Abyss has infinite number of floors, but these 10-floor dungeon that we attempted is supposed to be located near the bottom of the Abyss with just a single floor separating the throne of Abyss, where the Demon of Abyss resides in the bottom of the Abyss. Kai contemplated as he drove his car along the road connecting the highway, as he could get to the place Indomitable Wall had shared his location to, faster through highway than entering the city by the closest entry point from his home. Well, the demon was definitely strong. I still vividly remember the cutscenes from his raid, with it being the most difficult battle of Yggdrasil for our guild, right after World Devourer's raid. Kai mused as he reminisced the battle. The throne of Abyss, within the myriad palace of Abyss. World enemy, sovereign of original sins, the demon of the Abyss. They stood before it, Kai at the center, his coat trailing lightly, as he stood in the myriad palace of Abyss. The raid party stood in silence, the aftermath, the mental exhaustion of the previous 9 floors still weighing on their shoulders. They entered through the door, leading to the ruler of the Abyss. Zeroth was the first to open his mouth. The final stage, the origin of sin, at the bottom of the abyss, how poetic, he muttered, in a joyous glint. Sooner had they stepped inside the myriad palace of Abyss, it unfolded. Layers peeled backward into themselves like folding glass, revealing a tunnel of darkness, no floors, no ceiling, just a void suspended across multiple layers of reality. And beyond it, at the far end, a single, black throne sat upon a disk of still black water, threatening to consume all the light and life from the cosmos. The demon of the abyss rested upon it, head lowered, arms draped across the throne like a corpse long dead. Its presence distorted the space around it, their vision blurring, cloaked by the absence of the vacuum of space around the demon of the abyss, ever distorting. Less than more Inidium Kai Telos of Vanitas Regnum Anta, world champion, recognized greater than. Less than Evernight Candidum of Vanitas Regnum Anta, world champion, recognized greater than. Less than Rex Sub Luna of Vanitas Regnum Anta, world champion, recognized greater than. Less than Shining Knight of Vanitas Regnum Anta, world champion, recognized greater than. Less than Red Thorn of Vanitas Regnum Anta, world champion, recognized greater than. Kai was surprised by the pop-ups they received. It was then, the demon of the abyss opened its eyes, the Yggdrasil screeched, being subjected to its vision. Reality was rewritten as the demon of the abyss woke up from its slumber. Madness I. Madness E. Madness E. Madness IV. Madness V. Madness VI. Madness VII. Aura of Despair. Aura of Despair E. Aura of Despair E. Aura of Despair IV. Aura of Despair V. Aura of Despair VI. Aura of Despair VII. Insanity I. Insanity 2. Insanity 3. Insanity IV. Insanity V. Insanity V. Insanity 7. Aura of Death I. Aura of Death 2. Aura of Death 3. Aura of Death IV. Aura of Death V. Aura of Death V. Aura of Death 7. Corruption I. Corruption 2. Corruption 3. Corruption IV. Corruption V. Corruption V. Corruption 7. Comma. Many debuffs were applied against the trespassers of Abyss. It was he, whose very visage would drive anyone who laid their eyes to insanity and corruption. The Great Old One, the demon of the abyss had awakened, its movements a voracious maelstrom, indiscriminately devouring the essence of both the deceased and the living who dared to wander within its malevolent grasp. The very essence of his existence was a blight upon the cosmos, a perverse anomaly that twisted the fabric of reality into grotesque parodies of their original design. The demon of the abyss movement of stretching its body, caused the continuum of time to decay and space to distort, as spacetime turned obsolete. The Umbra Mortalis, the very shadow of death itself, surged forth like a sinister tide of obsidian flames, scorching through the world's crust as the demon's presence after its long slumber seeped into the world's foundation, akin to a malignant ink corrupting the integrity of a fragile edifice of multiple lower and higher dimension alike. The sinister, tar-black conflagration unfurled like venomous tendrils in the darkness of the cosmos, engulfing all of existence in its inexorable advance. His existence, his presence, the great entropy sought to revert creation back to the primordial void, erasing every trace of the cosmos, inception. The Yggdrasil trembled with the weight of his malevolence, fissures spreading like a plague, swallowing worlds whole, and reshaping them in a grotesque mockery of their former selves. Mountains crumbled, their once majestic peaks now mere rubble at the feet of the ruler of the abyss. The demon of the abyss had now awoken, gazing down at the mortals, while he remained draped over the throne of the abyss. The car's GPS pinged softly, dragging him back to the present. The city loomed closer now. Streetlights glimmered in the distance. He eased the car down to a crawl. Streetlights passed by in slow intervals, shadows of tall buildings stretching out. Kai glanced at the digital map. The location was tucked between a decommissioned business district and what looked like a retrofitted warehouse. He slowed as he approached the corner and turned toward the location Indomitable Wall had texted him. He parked across the street, turned off the car, and exhaled. Chapter 23. Kurenai Estate. Tokyo, Neo Japan. Earth. Year 2134. Overlord verse. Kai exhaled, his fingers tightening around the steering for a moment before letting go. The navigation showed the exact spot, a narrow street just off the main arcade, tucked between retro vending machines and a yakitori stall that had somehow survived into the 22nd century. He stepped out, and the sound of the car door caught more than a few eyes. His dark coat swept low, tailored sharply as a blend of classic elegance and corporate precision of a suit with long coat. His appearance wasn't flashy, but in a world that had gravitated toward subdued techwear and sterile practicality, with business suits, he stood out like a dump of charcoal on a snowfield. People stared at the enigma. Some with curiosity. Some with envy. A few with that familiar frustration that society often showed to anything unplaceable, especially someone who carried themselves without a care in the world, the people who had it easy. But as always, his presence along with his car and dress kept them from approaching him. He crossed the street, ignoring the stares. For a moment, halfway across, something made him stop. As he felt a familiar presence in the crowd. Kai's gaze swept behind him, across the neon signs, the crowd, the hum of scooters. But it was gone just as fast. He didn't chase the unknown variable. Just shook his head and pushed open the door. The air inside the shop changed instantly. Humid and dense with the smell of smoke, and cheap liquor. A traditional izakaya left behind by time, till serving. And packed with drunks. The volume spiked at his entrance, a few glasses clinked harder, a chorus of laughter too loud to be natural. But no one said anything. Kai's eyes scanned quickly, and there, near the back, a large hand waved lazily in the air. Akaza aka Indomitable Wall gestured towards him. Kai moved though the throng of drunkards. He didn't sidestep. He didn't weave. He simply walked, straight, unbothered, parting through the mess of bodies and slumped shoulders. One stumbling patron turned as if to block him, eyes bloodshot with drink, but something in Kai's gaze, his attire and the way he carried himself stalled the drunk man mid-motion. He stepped back instead, as he clicked his tongue in annoyance, but didn't dare to confront Kai. Akaza gave a short whistle as Kai reached the table. I swear, you walk through people like you don't give a fuck about them or the world. Kai gave a noncommittal shrug. Being the young prodigy of Kurenai family, there are some things you pick up or are just drilled into. Not as if we have a choice, he mused, as he looked down at the other man at the table. Or more accurately, over him. A drunk man in his late 20s laid slumped over the edge like a wilted leaf, knuckles white from gripping his empty glass, black hair tangled and sticking to his cheek. His shirt was wrinkled and stained, the signs of tears still fresh at the edge of his eyes. Kai sighed and pulled a chair. So, how's our guild's best assassin holding up? He said dryly, brushing imaginary dust from the chair before sitting. Did he finally relax? Or is he still trying to sing a song as a broken love poet? He muttered, remembering the background music artist from their call. In answer, Akira aka Nameless Shadow stirred. I loved her, he croaked, rising slowly like a corpse from a grave. His voice cracked, desperate, messy. I've loved her since forever. Ever since we were kids, for as long I remember, but, why? Why now? Why him? How could she? He mumbled. Then he dropped again, face first onto the glass table. Quote dot dot dot. Still at it, huh, Kai muttered. Akaza scratched the back of his head, looking more apologetic than embarrassed. He's been like this for a week now. I tried dragging him back to his place, but he said he wanted to drink in a place that smelled like loneliness. I think he read that in a manga. I'm not even surprised, Kai replied, voice flat. Love does rob them of their thinking capacity, I suppose they do enter a blind frenzy from it. Kai mumbled, a hopeless sigh escaped him. He reached inside his coat and pulled out a sealed tablet. Popping the top, he dropped one into an empty glass and poured water from the pitcher. Akaza blinked. Wait, that's a detox. Kai grabbed Akira's collar from behind and yanked him upright with one practiced motion. Akira barely reacted, eyes hazy and barely open. Make him drink this. Unless you want to translate depressed poetry of his, for the next hour. Akaza took the glass. Right, down you drink this, buddy, he said, bringing it to Akira's lips. The infamous assassin of Vanitas Regnum Anta squirmed, but the liquid was in before he could protest. He coughed, twitched, then froze. Kai leaned back and folded his arms looking over at the love-struck fool. Akaza watched his friend recovering, at least he appeared to be. Looking over at Kai, remembering the man they had met during the clan meetup, back then were just a small band of people, who had banded together to challenge Valhalla Dungeon and later created a clan. Akaza silently watched over his friend worried. Akira's hand trembled as he reached for the glass, his breath ragged, eyes still hazy from the aftermath of his emotional collapse. But he downed the water in one gulp. Akaza, he muttered, voice hoarse, gaze flicking to his friend beside him. His eyes then locked onto the man seated quietly across from him, the one person he hadn't expected to see here. Kai. The shock was evident, breaking through his stupor. His eyes widened, his mouth parting slightly as if he still wasn't convinced it was real. Kai's cocky smile plastered across his face, as if he were some poster boy for narcissism. Akira slumped further into his seat, the weight of embarrassment settling in. Sorry for dragging you into this. His voice was soft, shoulders hunched. Kai sighed. Don't worry about it. In a way, I'm partly responsible. I brought Shining Knight into the guild, after all. It's not your fault. Akaza cut in, shaking his head, brows furrowed. Akira echoed the motion, his hair falling into his face as he muttered, there's nothing you can say to help me, Kai. The resignation in his voice was palpable, flat, hollow, rejecting any sort of helping hand extended towards him. Akaza shot him a glare, but quickly apologized. Kai, please don't mind him, it's his intoxication and heartbreak speaking. He muttered, glancing at his childhood friend. Kai leaned back, chair creaking slightly beneath him. His gaze drifted to the ceiling for a moment before dropping back to Akira. You know, Akaza, he started, tone casual but sharp, this isn't uncommon. Akira's eyes narrowed, tension rising in his shoulders. There are plenty of fools who ruin themselves over one-sided love. Kai's voice was quiet, but it cut clean through the fog cloaking his mind. They build their whole world around someone. Assume the understanding, bond, the teasing, and their friendship, to mean more than they actually do. Akira's hands clenched into fists under the table. And when they finally realize the other person never saw them that way. Kai shrugged, his smile tinged with cold irony. They lose their balance. Just like him, making fool of themselves in the process. He spoke a bit with disdain. The words struck deeper than any slap could have. Akira's chair screeched back as he kicked it away from the table, fists flying toward Kai in blind anger. Akira's punch an inch away from Kai, when Kai stomped lightly, shifting his chair back just enough for the front legs of the chair to lift. The punch passed clean through the air where Kai's head had been a heartbeat ago. His chair landed back on the floor with a soft thud. Akira stumbled, his rage blinding him to everything but Kai's expression. Flat. Calm. Almost bored. Come on, Akira, Kai muttered, tilting his head as if inviting another swing. Wake up, and move on. You are blinded by your love. Give up on that useless love of yours. She doesn't and didn't love you. Akira growled, disoriented but fueled by raw emotion. He lunged again, this time trying a kick followed by another wild punch. Kai stood fluidly, pushing his chair a bit and jumped backwards, balancing with his right foot on the seat of the chair and his left on the backrest. His movements were effortless, just like stepping through stone to cross a river. Akaza tried to grab Akira. Wait. Akira, stop. But Akira ducked under Akaza's hand, his attention fully focused on Kai. Another punch and another miss. Kai jumped backward onto the next table, his long coat over his three-piece suit fluttering behind him. The patrons nearby looked up, half startled, wondering the cause for the fight, with few looking over for the shop owner to de-escalate the situation and with a few of them cheering the fighters, while the rest remained indifferent to the fight. Luckily for everyone involved, the table Kai landed on was empty. Don't lose your dignity and your job for some worthless love, you have your parents to worry about. Kai muttered, his voice steady, eyes never leaving Akira. Akira's chest rose and fell, sweat mixing with leftover tears. His arms slowly dropped to his sides, fists trembling, not with the urge to strike, but with the bitter ache of powerlessness. Have you calmed down enough to think calmly? Kai asked, tone casual. Akira stood there, silent, his breathing loud in his own ears. Good. Kai stepped off the table, landing lightly beside his chair, dusting his hands off. Akaza reached out again, finally managing to pull Akira back toward his seat. Kai sat down once more. His voice softened, barely above a whisper. Getting drunk, falling apart, lashing out at your friends and family, that is not fine, Akira. Kai muttered, with a wry smile. Shut up. Akira's voice cracked, part rage, part raw ache. Don't talk like you understand me, Kai. I may or may not understand your circumstances. Kai's words cut him off flatly. Watching someone you care about pick someone else. His eyes narrowed, a nostalgic smile on his face. Walking behind them. Supporting them. Knowing it's all pointless, but doing it anyway. That's a disaster, and at that point they are just asking for more pain. Kai muttered with a sigh, his tone confounding both Akira and Akaza. To them the way he spoke and the look on his face, was as if he was speaking from experience, but from his phrasing and the way he ended it, confused them. Even the way he looked at Akira with pity, did not help them. Knowing Kai's situation, it was impossible for them to imagine such a scenario. After all, it has nearly been a couple years shorter to complete a decade since they first met him. And as far as they could remember, he was in his high school back then and he has been the same. They couldn't imagine him with any other personality. They couldn't imagine him any other way. You have your whole life ahead of you, Akira. Do not let this setback hold you. Be happy for your friend, if you can at least act the part of being happy for her. Kai muttered, glancing at both of them. I loved her, was all Akira could mutter. For a silent guy, you are full of surprises. Anyway, weren't you three friends from your childhood? Kai spoke, looking at Akaza, probing. But before Akaza could answer, Akira shook his head and spoke. No, Akaza and Sayuri are neighbors and grew up together, while I befriended them later in middle school. Interesting, you must have loved for a very long time. Kai spoke. Looking back at Akaza, a chubby guy, who if he remembers correct, works as a manager at some construction company. While Akira had inherited his family's dojo and also works at a sales company, managing dojo in his free time. So, how's your dojo and job? Kai muttered, confusing them both. His question woke Akira from his stupor, trying to comprehend the reasoning behind the question, as he answered. It is fine, though I would love to quit and let my brother handle it. But my father is against the idea, saying that my brothers doesn't have what it takes to teach. So, what about your other job? Kai muttered. It's manageable, I suppose. Though, I am not interested in inheriting the dojo, but this is the arrangement I have come with my father to continue forward. He mumbled under his breath. Well, you are quite unsure of your future, aren't you? Kai muttered. Akira slumped down hearing his answer. Akaza was saddened by his friend's situation, but he didn't like the way Kai was handling the situation. He opened his mouth to stop him, but was shocked to have Kai's attention on him. Then, what about you, Akaza? Is the job treating you good? Kai muttered, glancing at Akaza, after hearing Akira's answer. I am doing well enough to support myself, for now. He replied. Kai sighed at both of them. So, have you given any thought towards marrying or dating, Akaza? Kai spoke, an internal sigh he released watching his flustered look at the sudden question, also confusing Akira of his choice of questions in this situation. No, mumbled Akaza. For Kai, to look at the flustered look of a man in his 30s, right after watching another man cry, was making it quite a unique experience for him, not to say if it were one of his least desirable memories. And there's that dejected sad look, he mused. So, what do you think about Sayuri, Akira? Kai muttered, once again confusing them both. Akira had enough of it. What if he was from some powerful family and was quite rich? Being rich doesn't give him the right to demean their life, the people who struggle and live under the constant pressure of the society. And was going to argue about it, when Akaza intervened. Kai, he is hurting. He had his heart broken, not long ago, and now you are undermining his love and even his life. Please have some empathy, and help me console him. Or you can leave. This is not a game. Akaza spoke with a stern tone. It was new for both Kai and Akira. Akira had never witnessed this side of his friend, despite being with him since forever. Kai laughed, angering not just Akaza but even Akira. They had enough of this young master's charade. After all, to them Kai did call himself a young master, every time he joked around about himself or the wealth of his family, reasoning with them, for his excess spending in Yggdrasil. They were both going to get up and leave, when Kai smiled and stared Akira in the eye, making him pause, doubtful of his sanity. While he had come to know about his condition from Hitoshi, after Sayuri had expressed her jealousy towards his blind spending in game. But that didn't mean he could demean them or their friends. He was now worried for his sanity, was going to speak. When Kai beat him to it. So, what is it that made you love her? He mumbled, still seated as Akira and Akaza had both stood up. You see, I am new to this business, as you can tell. He muttered. Earning a dubious look from them, Kai sighed and gestured them to take a seat. Akira, did you truly love Sayuri? Kai muttered, uttering her name again and again. Before he had always called her by her game ID. This development confused Akira, as he stared at Kai. Smiling at Kai's twisted personality and the joy he found in his misery, Akira answered him, as a courtesy for the long friendship they shared. Yes, I truly loved her, with all my being. Spoke Akira, pouring all his emotion in that one sentence. Strangely he felt relief, rather than annoyance. As if a weight had been lifted of him. His mind that had been clouded for the past days, numbing his senses, cleared away at least partly. Though he still felt his heart ache, remembering her, but was now, a bit calm enough to think about his current situation and not have her occupy his mind. So, what is it that you desire now? Her happiness or your happiness? His question was quite simple to him. Akira opened his mouth to answer his question and leave this place, while all the cells in his body urged him to punch Kai in the face. Yet, he couldn't. Akira's mouth opened and closed as a fish gasping for air, but he still failed to answer his question. Despite wishing to answer his question with her happiness, he struggled to get any word out. So, what about you, Akaza? Do you love Sayuri enough to wish for her happiness over yours or his? His question, sending a ripple among them. For Kai, he was all too familiar with Akaza's look. And the way his guildmate looked at Sayuri or wandering soul in game and in real life. The way he spoke with her, and the way he stepped back, when Akira and Sayuri conversed. Even now, with Shining Knight or Shiroi Suzutsuki. Their situation and personality were quite different, yet Kai could understand his situation and his pain. And the love he held for Sayuri and how deep it ran. Kai felt the love Akaza buried within himself, when he conversed with his two good friends. One, a love of his life, and the other, his good friend, also the guy who loved the love of his life. But to have their love taken away by a third party, wasn't something they could have expected. With the way he defended her, when Akira accused her of being gold digger, made it quite apparent. Added with the way he talked about her. Describing her, painting her in beautiful light, and the love his voice held while talking about her. Made it very obvious, you just needed to observe. He mused. Though it had been Silent Witch who had first questioned him about the love triangle in this particular group, when Kai started observing them more closely, paying attention to their conversation and interaction. Kai hadn't involved himself with the group dynamics nor interfered, to let life take its course. And now his declaration was met with rebuttal from Akaza, while Akira shockingly stared at Akaza. But to be met with silence from Kai, who didn't try arguing against him. Akaza turned silent, letting many possibilities run through Akira's mind, when he stared at Akaza with look of betrayal. Their reaction to the situation amused Kai, and to find him laughing at their predicament. Angered by his reaction, both of them couldn't control themselves anymore and jumped on him together, both of them swinging their punches. Only to fall flat on their face, tired and exhausted, while Kai comfortably sat on his chair, after making short work of them. Their fight was short, and before the owner could intervene, Kai was done with them. Ever proving that the tens of various martial arts certificates and trophies showcased in his house weren't for show after all. Chapter 24. Niavelier. Yggdrasil. Earth. January of year 2135. Overlord verse. The lost civilization from a forgotten era. Shoko's fingers traced along the smooth wall, blue circuit-like lines pulsing faintly under her fingertips. It was mesmerizing. This was part of the new expansion event, the lost civilization of a forgotten era, a piece of Yggdrasil's late-game content designed to bait both new and old players back into the game. The lines weren't fully magic, nor were they quite technology. The lore claimed they were remnants of an ancient civilization that merged both, but from her experience playing this game submerging in such content and genre, Shoko understood it for what it was, an aesthetic designed to appeal to both the fantasy and sci-fi crowd. Her eyes narrowed as a golem emerged from the side corridor, mechanical joints whirring, its plated body gleaming with faint glow of runes. The golem was sleek, similar to cyborgs from sci-fi shows and movies she watched. But for all its design flair, it was weak. Shoko didn't even spare it a glance. Her finger moved, using a skill almost lazily. Less than divine radiance greater than. A burst of golden light erupted from her body, pure, concentrated divine energy. The automaton's core flickered once before shattering. Its body cracked apart in tiny parts, vanishing into particle dust. Such a cheap event, she muttered, sighing. This whole Lost Civilization patch was designed to lure in new players. With added items for new players to gain equal footing against old players. Power suits were introduced, an obvious marketing ploy. Pay-to-win items to gain instant power-up. Her gaze shifted toward the city square ahead. At the center of the sprawling ruin, between the remnants of collapsed skyscrapers and glowing, rune-inscribed highways, and gazing at the sky, she spotted Kai and Hitoshi racing each other in customized power suits. Hitoshi's was humongous, modeled with a classic mecha design. Exaggerated shoulders, rocket thrusters, gleaming armor plates. Kai's suit was the opposite, sleek, skin-tight, painted red with glowing blue disc at the center of the chest. Shoko remembered his words clearly when he modified it. Iron Man it is. Now they were zipping through the abandoned city like children, weaving between crumbling buildings, shooting beams at the remaining golem guards patrolling the city. She sighed, rubbing her temple. Childish, she whispered under her breath. Nearby, a group of their guildmates chased after them like children at recess. Nameless Shadow, Indomitable Wall, Zeroth, Red Order, Shining Knight, Silent Witch, Kindred Star, they were all in on the farce, laughing, shouting and taunting each other. Role-playing to their heart's content with power suits. Wandering Soul approached from behind, arms crossed, her long robe billowing slightly from a soft breeze. Well, they're certainly enjoying themselves, Wandering Soul muttered, her tone dry. They are certainly enjoying their little game, huh? Manabu said, echoing Wandering Soul's words. Manabu had appeared beside them. Shoko exhaled slowly, looking over her shoulder. She nodded, but her expression stayed distant. With the boss of this Lost Civilization event defeated, their main objective arriving to this city, and for participating in this event had been completed. And now, they were playing in the city, while collecting loot and further planning to give their guild base a makeover with their loot from the Lost Civilization. Her guild, the once elusive Vanitas Regnum Anta, had shrunk again. Down to 24 active members. Most of the artists and designers Kai had brought in were gone, their job of working on their guild base, creating his utopia, as he worded it, complete. Along with few players who had joined them later and at the beginning, had left their guild, to build their life in real world, burdened with responsibilities. Shoko couldn't understand it. Kai kept logging in as though Yggdrasil was life itself. Building, expanding, perfecting the layout of their city inside Avalon. Even now, he expanded, adventured and collected loot. All to satisfy his collector's spirit. Rather than concentrate on his life outside, try getting medical treatment, rushing to save his life at all costs. It was as if he had come to terms with his fate, he had resigned himself to fate that awaited him. He had given up on fighting against the encroaching death. From what she heard, there had been advancement in that field and there was a small possibility of him surviving his ordeal, yet he refused to try to save himself. She just couldn't understand him. From what she heard, he was somehow still going good, despite what doctors had predicted previously, and was still in somewhat good condition. Idiot, she muttered again under her breath, having had enough of his reckless and thoughtless approach toward life. It pained her heart to see him like this, giving up on his life, not fighting it. It was then Manabu sent a private message to her. Checking the notification, she opened the message to take a look. Rex sub Luna, things are ready at the guild. We can return any time now. Shoko turned to look at Manabu, and nodded. While, Kai, who also read the message Manabu had sent him, smiled. Agartha. The eternal flying garden of Utopia, Avalon. Yggdrasil. The grand balcony of the giant castle of Agartha, the 10th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta's guild base, shone under the soft glow of sunset from an artificial sun that adorned the sky of this floor. The giant castle loomed at the back of the floor, surrounded with cascading waterfalls, while ahead of it was a sprawling utopian city pulsed with buildings of chaotic design, filled with building for various purposes. Kai leaned back on his seat, quietly scrolling through the loot list displayed in his inventory. Rings, artifacts, relics, golems, weapons, and drop materials from the Lost Civilization event were being sorted by Kindred Star and Hitoshi with almost mechanical efficiency. Meanwhile, the rest of the guild laughed and lounged in the giant balcony of the giant castle in Agartha, sharing idle banter. That was when Manabu pinged Kai in private chat. Rex sub Luna, it's time. Kai gave a long sigh, then flicked his eyes toward Shoko, sending her a nonverbal signal through his private chat. Shoko groaned softly, giving him the side eye. She stood from her seat and clapped her hands once, sharp enough to cut through the idle chatter. All right, everyone listen up. The gathered members quieted immediately. The sound of waterfalls in the background gave the scene an almost dreamlike atmosphere. It's been a while, she began, but as you all know, Shining Knight and Wandering Soul have finally decided to get engaged. And are set to marry soon. A wave of applause followed. Shining Knight fell silent, his usually stoic face now flushed under his avatar of Yggdrasil. Wandering Soul turned crimson in reality, covering her face with her hand. But before the crowd could erupt into a frenzy of cheers, and Shoko could once again try calming them down, Manabu stepped forward. With a calm expression, he cast less than blood requiem greater than. A red sphere of pulsating blood formed above his palm before shooting into the air and exploding like a grand display, its crimson droplets vanishing into the virtual sky. A very powerful skill, he had gained through his racial class. Its power slightly surpassing Tentier spells. Shoko cleared her throat. It's a joyous occasion, she continued, and while we'll celebrate their wedding properly later in real life, let's take this time to celebrate it here in Yggdrasil first. At her cue, the guild's NPCs, intricately designed servants coated by Wandering Soul and Silent Witch appeared, carrying silver and gold trays laden with food and drinks. Tables materialized on cue by Kai, at the sides of the balcony, transforming the area into a grand virtual banquet. Silent Witch walked up and stood beside Shoko, added softly, and this is also for the guild itself. We've come a long way. We'll miss our friends who left, but let's continue on as long as we can. Her voice echoed slightly in the simulation, followed by cheers by players. Thank you, said Shining Knight, his voice low but sincere. It means a lot, Wandering Soul followed, both of them happy for gaining such good friends. At that moment, Kai called Manabu and gestured subtly toward Hitoshi. Manabu caught the signal and walked up front beside Shoko and Silent Witch. I'm happy for our friends, he began, tone steady, but that's not all. The guild's chatter paused, attention shifting. I'd also like to congratulate Heiki Kaji and Kindred Star for their engagement. Though they are both shy in expressing themselves, but as a member of this guild, I would like you all to share your blessings with them. Dropping a bombshell upon the guild, surprising everyone over the announcement. The announcement stunned the crowd. They'd all seen Heiki and Kindred Star together, but no one had expected this. Especially not when Kai was also seen in their company. Even Indomitable Wall patted Nameless Shadow on the back, muttering something only half-audible about something they only knew. Meanwhile, the two most chaotic guild members, Red Order and Zeroth, the zealous and the hardcore roleplayers, sat in rare silence, reflecting on their own lives. Their usual antics of proclamation or dialogues were absent tonight. They were the last of the problem children of Vanitas Regnum Anta, with wildcards like Kai, Hitoshi and Kindred Star. Wondering where they had gone wrong with their life. At least, they consoled themselves with associating and feeling an unknown bond with Kai and Rex sub Luna, who from their perspective were probably the most desirable guys for any girl, stuck in their guild in the same situation as them, except they chose to stay the way they were, unlike these two. Yet, they comforted themselves, looking over at Kai and Manabu, from what they knew about them. Perhaps it was loneliness, or just realization. At the back of the balcony, away from the crowd, Kai stood with Immortal Witch, known in real life as Azusa Ryu. Her avatar was a black-robed figure, long witch hat with long blonde hair cascading down her back, and large blue eyes that shimmered faintly in the twilight. Azusa had once worked in Kai's corporate office, but life had pulled her into a spiral. Her younger sister's accident had forced her to withdraw from the workforce. It was then that Kai had extended her an unusual offer, shocking her with the kind of work he expected from her. He'd given her control of his library project inside his guild base in Yggdrasil. Azusa's work had been a secret to other members of Guild, except for Shoko. She had been compiling books, research papers and theses on science, including blueprints for various things, mathematics, philosophy, psychology, history, economics, politics, literature, strategy among many other things, including comics, manga, light novels, and many more. Azusa worked from home, logged in remotely while managing her life for a couple of years now. Even Kayaba knew about it now, but Kai had paid him off to keep silent. Kayaba hadn't objected. Perhaps he understood. Perhaps he didn't care. Kai's real-world health was already deteriorating, though not as much as doctors had predicted, and Shoko, who kept tabs on Kai, had long since stopped questioning his fixation. Shoko did not bother with his little project after Kai stated his wish of owning all the books in existence. His answer had been simple: managing or building such a project was not easy, but it was a whole different situation in a virtual world. Now, as the virtual banquet continued, Kai's eyes wandered over his guildmates, laughing, bickering, eating pixelated food with smiles on their faces. The banquet's warmth lingered in the air, laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of conversations weaving through the balcony of the giant castle. But Kai remained at the corner, by the glass door of the balcony, blending in the background. As he gazed at the NPC he had created, though almost all NPCs of the guild had been created by him, with assistance from Hitoshi. But it had been him who designed them and created them. And currently, a female knight stood by the glass door, her blonde hair cascading down. An NPC based on Artoria Pendragon from Fate-verse. She, unlike other NPCs of the guild, didn't belong to the guild, but was created using a world item, Children of Yggdrasil. Her existence equaled world-class items of world champions and the items made from caloric stone created from the hoarding of celestial uranium along with other prismatic ores they mined and bought from the market. She stood still, like a painting come to life, her eyes reflecting both dusk and something softer, a quiet kingly dignity. She was a knight clad in silver and blue armor, her cape fluttering to the wind. His mind wandered back to Red Thorn, his guildmate and fellow world champion, who surprisingly was obsessed with Artoria. And when she quit the game a few months back after marriage and was soon to leave Neo-Japan, she had used less than wish upon a star greater than and sacrificed all her experience to pass down her world champion class to Artoria, which would have been impossible, if not for intervention from Kai and Shoko. Similarly, she transferred her world champion equipment to Artoria. Similarly, other members of the guild who left and deleted their account to concentrate on their real life, burdened with responsibilities, had passed on their exclusive class to their favorite NPCs, and as for the rest of their inventory had been purchased by Kai at a fair price IRL. Kai's gaze drifted from Artoria to the rest of the party. One by one, speeches came to an end, and then, to his mild annoyance, everyone turned to stare at him. Shoko approached first, smirking faintly as she tugged on his sleeve. "Come on, Kay. You should say something for everyone." He groaned, half laughing. "I'm pretty sure everyone else has already said their piece. I am not sure if there is anything left to be said." Though, he had no issue to converse, but wasn't in the mood to give speeches. He was angry with his body and his fate. Despite his easygoing attitude he showcased, he was frustrated on the inside. As the last day and the end of Yggdrasil approached, his body wasn't the same. Silent Witch appeared beside him, clasping his arm lightly and guiding him toward the balcony railings. "There has to be something you can say, my dear guild master," she teased, her tone gentle but firm. And just like that, the crowd began chanting his name. "Morse. Morse. Morse." He sighed, raising his hands in surrender. All right, fine." He stepped forward, eyes sweeping over the group. Friends, comrades, guildmates. His guild. The members who were part of his Yggdrasil family. First, he began, voice steady but relaxed, "Congratulations to Shining Knight and Wandering Soul, and to Keiji and Kindred Star. You guys have been great friends. And, to everyone else, thank you for being part of this long and enjoyable journey." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the group, everyone nodding. "Everyone who has been part of this guild, which started from a clan that I, Evernight Candidum and others started. Thank you," he muttered. "As an immortal demon, all I can say is that I have enjoyed Yggdrasil with you all and will enjoy it with you all for as long it lasts. While there were many who came and left, it still is a great joy for me to be part of this little group. And do not worry, I will always be here, even after the end of Yggdrasil." Applause followed, though quieter this time. More solemn. With a few shedding tears at their journey, with many friends they made along the way, the memories that they shared. It was quite an emotional ride. As they turned to their friends list in the console, with a few names dimmed, blending in the background, with a bubble text beside their game id, last active 2 years ago marking their name. Added with few whose name had disappeared with them. They remained quiet, surprised at the passage of time from when they first started playing this game. Kai turned back to the balcony railing, hands resting on the marble railings. Below, the sprawling cityscape of their 10th floor stretched toward the artificial horizon. Towers penetrating the skies, along with various other buildings, almost serving every facilities that a man could think of. With the waterfall at the end, stretching to infinity. Gazing down at the city and the guild that he and his friends called home, brought a smile to his face. Gazing at the ethereal glow of the setting sun, he picked up a wine glass off a tray held by an automaton-made NPC of his guild, by his side and raised it high. His act caught the attention of everyone present. The room silenced on its own, no commands needed. Every eye fell on him. Kai brought the glass down to his eye level, and stared at the crimson liquid, his reflection warping in the glass. And softly, almost to himself, he said, "For those that live too long, the friends of days gone by and the scenes from their adventures live on in their memories. As such, I have no regrets in meeting you, my dear friends from Yggdrasil. Should the day ever come that we are not together, you will continue to shine like gold in my memories." Kai muttered the lines of Zhongli from his memories that his friend has shared with him. He didn't understand why he muttered it, but he just felt like it was all he could come up with. A video that his friend had prompted him to take a look at, urging to also start Genshin Impact. With the setting sun, casting its beautiful radiance behind him, on the waterfall at the edges of the floor, Agartha. Silence reigned at the balcony, everyone pondering over his words. When Kai dropped the glass, without even sipping the wine, the glass, unlike their expectation, did not shatter, but rolled on the floor, as the wine disappeared. Shoko stood staring at his back, from the sidelines. Her gaze fixed not on the man holding the glass, but on his back, the one that somehow always felt like it was moving further away from her. And still, she said nothing. Chapter 25. Muspelheim. Yggdrasil. Earth. January of year 2138. Overlord verse. 5 months before the end of Yggdrasil. Agartha. The eternal flying garden of Utopia, Avalon. The grand hall of giant castle of Agartha, the 10th floor was shrouded in soft artificial twilight, the kind programmed to illuminate the room, without ever truly darkening the room, unless desired. Kai stood alone, his hands behind his back, his gaze lingering on the hall of memories. Frames lined the walls, photographs captured in the game. Group pictures at dungeon clearings, at seasonal events, guild parties, world events. Some were blurry, some perfectly timed, and some accidental candid shots where someone had laughed or waved at the wrong moment. And Kai stood in front of one such photograph. In the photograph, Kai leaned against the railing of the balcony they stood on, with other members of the guild. The photo had been taken right after they had cleared the Lost Civilization event, during the celebration of Shining Knight's engagement to Wandering Soul, and Hitoshi's engagement to Itsuki or Kindred Star. A strange portrait, that was probably the last picture Kai had with the most of the players in that photograph. Kai smiled faintly, but his eyes were distant. Now, he mused, it's just me, Shoko, Manabu, Hitoshi, and Itsuki left. His gaze sharpened, narrowing slightly at the cascade of memories pouring through his mind. It hadn't happened all at once. At first, people cut back their playtime, naturally, as life moved on. Families, jobs, children. But after that day, after that specific night on the balcony, after the celebration, many had chosen to move on in real life. Zeroth and Red Order had been the first to approach him. They, similar to others before, had wished to sell their whole inventory along with their classes. And he had obliged and bought their whole account in a roundabout way. Then came Nameless Shadow and Indomitable Wall, Akira and Akaza. They too had stepped away, selling him their accounts and moving on from the game. Most of them wished to keep in touch with him and Manabu, but neither of the two bothered with remaining in touch with them. Though it wasn't their fault, but to Kai and Manabu, all they were interested was in their money and power. A few friends of his from other guilds and clans he had cherished followed suit, some quietly, some openly. But the pattern was always the same. And when the announcement came, Yggdrasil was soon to shut down its servers. That had been the final push. Every remaining guild member, everyone except for Shoko, Manabu, Hitoshi, and Itsuki, came to him, one by one, eager to cash out. While they still could. They sold their accounts, and Kai bought everything. It had been a golden opportunity to them and they saw Kai as a fool to invest money in a falling game. And Kai, like a demon, bought all their inventory, smiling and nodding at their jibber and jabber, while he paid them. Yet, Kai sighed unsure of his complicated and contradictory emotions on the development. He had been happy at the chance to monopolize, freely without any underhanded techniques from his end. To have the monopoly of the guild base in the new world. But he, unbeknownst to himself, felt sadness. He was angry with them for throwing away their friendship and bond for money. He felt betrayed by their action but was also happy to not have them in the new world. He sighed at the unexpected turn of events and his complicated emotions. Though money isn't omnipotent, he muttered, the words escaping his lips in a tone void of warmth, there is nothing in this mortal plane that you can't buy with money. Money rules over all, something that was born to replace the barter system that the society functioned on to increase the chances of survival of mankind, now has its clutches on everyone. It can even prompt man to kill for it, be they shared a deep bond or blood. Their parting words echoed in his mind. Honeyed promises about staying in touch offline. Let's meet for dinner sometime. We'll hang out, Kai. It's just a game, right? Yet, he remained impassive with them. With a sigh, he rotated a single gold coin of Yggdrasil between his fingers. Its polished surface gleamed, but there was no joy in his gaze, only a bitter aftertaste lingering in the hollow of his heart. Though I suppose I should be thankful, he mused silently. Being born into money does have its perks. And I won't have to worry about finances in the new world, either. His thoughts drifted toward the two world items safely secured in his vault of the last floor, the 15th floor, Arrow of Time. The Ring of Dropner, a world item that multiplied gains by eightfold. Experience points, gold coins, HP recovery, MP regeneration, buffs, it stacked all the perks. And then there was the Well of Riches. Anunnaki, a statue of a golden goddess, halo shimmering, forever pouring limitless treasures from her sacred urn. The statue conjured not only gold but rare jewels, and trade goods, which could be exchanged directly for Yggdrasil currency. As a world item, it was beyond game-breaking for him, providing endless Yggdrasil gold along with other riches. Pondering on their departure, he couldn't help but remember the conversation between Manabu and Itsuki. They were fools, Manabu had said after their guildmates had chosen to cash out. Itsuki, confused with his statement, had questioned him why did he think of them as fools, if not Hitoshi and her love for this game, she would have done the same. She had regarded them as smart to try to get their money they had spent on the game, before its closing. And with the possibility to make more money, she couldn't think of why it had been a foolish decision. They rather chose money than possible connection to most influential part of the society, who practically controlled the entirety of politics, economy and the city of the Neo Valley. And yet they couldn't think of future and chased short-term goals, throwing away the connections they had built. Manabu spoke, sighing and continued, they chose money, which they could easily burn through in a span of a day. No wonder they are still poor and aren't able to climb. Now, what would you call people like that, other than fools? Itsuki, hearing his answer, couldn't agree more. While Shoko and Hitoshi smiled for Kai to shake his head. As Immortal Witch had intervened, drilling Manabu for his answer. Well, not everyone is as privileged as you to prioritize moving forward than tackling their current problems. With Manabu turning silent and rest followed his suit, as Immortal Witch continued with her lecture for Kai to intervene, just like her. Well, Immortal Witch, I suppose that is enough. He muttered, signaling her to stop drilling them. My dear Immortal Witch, I understand where you are coming from but Rex Sub Luna is also right in his place. Hearing his answer, she tried arguing but to see him signal her to let him continue, she calmed down for a moment to hear his perspective on this issue. After all, it was he who had been buying away the accounts. Most of our guild members weren't in that desperate position that you portray them, Immortal Witch. If not, they wouldn't have spent thousands of yen to purchase cosmetic effects and other items. So, your concern is unfounded. As for those players, I don't suppose they would spend much money in a game. Unless, as Rex Sub Luna spoke, they are fools. Yet, among the current active players in the guild, Itsuki and Hitoshi did not come from money like Kai, Shoko and Manabu. Hitoshi's father was the driver of Manabu's father. And after losing both his parents in an accident, the Hojo family had taken him in. But now that he had graduated and stepped into adulthood, Hitoshi had chosen to work for a small consultancy company, on his own merit. Manabu had offered him to work for his company, but Hitoshi had wished to achieve something on his own. As well as financial aid, that Hitoshi had clearly denied. With that, Hitoshi had tried paying off the money that Hojo family had used on him, for Manabu to deny. Are we friends because of money? Manabu had asked back then, his tone direct but calm. Hitoshi had respected that answer. Itsuki had joined Hitoshi in the same firm after their marriage, both of them determined to carve out lives of independence, to build a small and happy family. Kai sighed again, closing his hand around the coin. And then there was Immortal Witch, Azusa. She had retired too, leaving behind her avatar to focus on her real-world responsibilities. Kai had worried about her, of course. And there was also Konami, who had been too faithful to Kai and had not married, fully focused on serving him till the end. Luckily, both of them had been around the same age, and he had tried playing the matchmaker for them to surprisingly hit off. Both of them had hit off with discussing Kai's antics. At least someone settled down properly, and have found happiness. Kai thought, a rare, bittersweet smile brushing his lips. Unwilling to let his loyal butler remain alone, alienated in the world after his demise. With a flick of his wrist, he dismissed the gold coin back into his inventory. It was then he heard a familiar voice echo through the silent hall. Drowning in the memories again, are you? Kai turned, his eyes narrowing slightly before softening at the sight. Manabu. It had been weeks since Manabu last logged in. Shoko had met Wandering Soul for coffee today. Hitoshi and Itsuki had been busy for weeks now. Kai had gotten used to the solitude, except for when Shoko logged in. So, to see Manabu here, in the Hall of Memories, felt almost surreal. Without another word, Manabu walked beside him and stopped before the same photograph Kai had been staring at. The picture from that day on the balcony, the celebration after the Lost Civilization event. Shining Knight's engagement, Wandering Souls blushing as she kept her head down, Hitoshi and Itsuki's intertwined hands. Kai himself, standing by the railing. While he stood at the side, gazing at the castle and the couples. He felt a churning feeling in his stomach, gazing at the photograph, but maintained his composure. Time moves on, Manabu whispered, his gaze heavy. Kai had intended to greet him properly but then noticed something that made his expression shift. Manabu's level was gone. Kai frowned, his eyes narrowing. You have reset. Manabu shook his head, a weary smile crossing his face. No. I'm quitting. Kai blinked, caught off guard by the sudden announcement. So you're here to cash in too. Manabu smirked faintly. Relax. I'm not here to sell you anything. He paused, eyes still on the photo. This guild has a lot of memories. There were times when I thought about buying this game out myself. But with you and Shoko holding it, I never had the chance and could never hope for it. His gaze drifted toward Kai. I know you love this game. So does she. That's why I've always wondered, why haven't you stopped it from ending? Kai let out a quiet breath, because, Manabu, everything that begins must end. Life follows a natural order. Yggdrasil's no different. Everything that is born must die, just like us. While, the question remains is when. That is the natural order of this universe. His tone was calm, philosophical. Manabu smiled, with resignation from Kai's answer. It was something that he at times did. Manabu smiled, but his expression remained somber. Well, my inventory's in good hands now. So are my classes. I came empty-handed to Yggdrasil, and I'll leave the same way. His eyes darkened slightly. I suppose it's not fate. It's just life. Kai's brows furrowed. Interacting with Kai for a while now, Manabu had picked up a few skills and wished to use it for his farewell. Why now? Kai asked, unsure of his abrupt decision. Manabu exhaled slowly, his eyes meeting Kai's directly. I wasn't sure how to bring it up, he murmured, his voice tightening, but I can't keep you in the dark. He paused. Then, without embellishment, he dropped the words that shattered the stillness of Kai's world. Hitoshi and Itsuki are dead. For the first time in a long while, Kai froze completely. His mind blanked, his thoughts collapsing inward like a black hole. The last time he had felt this hollow was when the news of his mother's death had reached him in this life, when he was just 7. Barely a couple decades ago, he had met with the news. When he felt venerable, before he was diagnosed with his terminal illness. When Kai finally managed to ask, his voice rough. 3 days ago, Manabu answered, his tone subdued but direct. Kai closed his eyes. He had been playing Yggdrasil, unaware of the tragedy that struck to 2 of his close friends. How? Kai's voice sounded distant, like he wasn't quite sure who was asking. Both of them attended a night party at their office, where from what I know, Itsuki was sexually assaulted and killed, while it is alleged that Hitoshi committed suicide after the ordeal, unable to come to terms with it. Manabu did not need to say any more. Kai had logged out from the game. Hitoshi had been a dear friend and so did Itsuki more so than Manabu. Shoko, Hitoshi and Itsuki had been his good friends that stayed with him till the present. As for Hitoshi and Itsuki, they stayed by his side until death. He could not stop himself from giving hell to those involved, yet he failed to understand how Manabu had remained quiet. His worldview crumbled from the news, grieving for their tragedy. Kai sat in his car, when he received Manabu's message on his cell. Manabu, I already have my men looking around. I know that it will not satisfy you with just this, so, I'm sharing the location, be there in 10. Chapter 26. High Hill Cafe. Tokyo, Neo Japan. Earth, year 2138. Overlord verse. 5 months before the end of Yggdrasil. The soft chime of the doorbell rang as Shoko entered the cafe, an upscale establishment that had recently gained popularity on social media for its scenic rooftop and flower-infused desserts. The air was warm with the faint scent of roasted beans and bergamot, blending into an oddly comforting haze. Located in the luxurious part of the district of the bustling city of Tokyo. She made her way past the polished wooden counters and elegant interiors, taking the narrow spiral staircase to the top floor balcony. It was a private space, closed off from the rest of the cafe, reserved for VIP patrons. And there she was, Sayuri, or wandering soul as most people in Yggdrasil knew her, waving with a bright smile as she rose from her seat. Shoko offered a small nod, walking over with her usual quiet grace before sitting down across from her. The two women had known each other for over a decade now, their friendship shaped by Yggdrasil. You're late, Sayuri teased, motioning toward the chilled jasmine tea she'd ordered for both of them. Shoko picked up the glass, and nodded, jasmine tea, It suits you. Cold, elegant, and makes people question whether you're judging them with every blink. Shoko rolled her eyes. That sounds like projection. They both chuckled, the tension easing like the steam rising from the pot between them. The conversation drifted from light topics, recent work stress, weird food combinations her husband, Shining Knight or Shiroi Suzutsuki wanted her to try, and her daily life. Married life's comfortable, Sayuri murmured, her finger lazily circling the rim of her cup. Though he still hasn't learned how to treat me in public, without embarrassing us both in the process. Shoko allowed herself a rare, soft smile. But tell me, Shoko, what about you? Anyone on your radar? Sayuri muttered, eyeing her friend, hoping to connect her with a friend of hers, if she still wasn't stuck in the past. The question was casual, delivered with the usual warmth, but the shift in Shoko's body didn't go unnoticed. Her lips tightened slightly. She looked out toward the railing of the balcony, her fingers tightening around the cold glass. Sayuri blinked. Wait, was she, blushing? Sayuri mused. Shoko didn't answer immediately, but that pink flush across her cheeks was more telling than any words. Sayuri tilted her head, openly staring. In 12 years, she had never seen her friend respond like this. Not even once. Don't tell me. Sayuri whispered, her voice trailing with disbelief. Her curiosity sharpened. After so many hours of gaming, so many hours of chatting, she had only ever suspected. She had even probed subtly, especially toward him, but the man always brushed it off or looked deliberately confused, as if pretending not to notice. And she could finally get hold of Shoko, and make her speak. Now the blush on Shoko's cheeks was the final confirmation. She had suspected something for years. The way Shoko stood slightly closer to him during meetings. The moments she watched him in silence, the way her tone shifted when talking about him. Most players didn't pick up on it, he certainly didn't or played the fool, but Sayuri had spent too much time around her not to notice the small things. He, of course, never encouraged it. That much was clear. He never flirted, never even gave hope or wished to have any romantic relations. She even suspected he knew and simply chose not to acknowledge it, as if willing ignorance was better than the burden of response. Given what Sayuri knew of his condition, his terminal diagnosis, the countdown over his head, it made sense to her. He had built walls around himself, for him such emotions were inconvenient to entertain. And yet, Shoko stayed loving him. Sayuri couldn't help but wonder why. She glanced sideways at her friend. Why him? She thought, chewing the inside of her cheek. Kai Kuranai. A man who was brilliant, handsome, obscenely rich, and equally narcissistic. Not in a malicious way. No, Kai didn't look down on people because he despised them. He just pitied them, in a distant, impersonal way. Yet, the reason for such an action remained elusive to her. But from his tales that she heard and his achievements, she could sort of understand his perspective, but yet she remained oblivious to the way he saw the world. It's been over a decade, Sayuri muttered, unable to keep the thought to herself. And you never once said a word. Shoko finally looked up, her expression wavering between surprise and discomfort. Her blush deepened. Sayuri smiled slyly. I understand that you like him, she said, watching the reaction closely, but I wonder, how did it happen? When did you fall in love with him? The directness of the question shattered Shoko's composure. Her eyes widened, her mouth parted, and she actually looked flustered. She was not calm and had been genuinely caught off guard. A twinge of jealousy crept into Sayuri's chest, not because she loved Kai, but because Shoko, in all her cold beauty and gracefulness she emitted, could look this adorable. It wasn't fair. They were both grown women of similar age, with she being in her early 30s and Shoko, as she was in her late 20s. And yet here Shoko was, blushing like a teenager. It made Sayuri want to flick her forehead out of jealousy. To her Shoko looked adorable, and beautiful. And pinch her, she did to bring Shoko from her dreamland. Shoko winced, rubbing her hand where Sayuri had pinched it. You were drifting off into daydreams, Sayuri said, feigning innocence. You looked like a romantic heroine waiting for her hero. That's not funny, Shoko muttered, eyes averted. Then answer me. Sayuri leaned in. When was it? The moment you fell for him. After all, he was indeed a desirable choice for women without his narcissism, but for a woman of Shoko's stature, there was no end to men she could choose from. And Shoko tried to bluff. What are you even talking about? Sayuri smirked, unconvinced. Oh, I don't know. Maybe the young genius. I have no idea what you're implying. Sayuri tilted her head, and muttered. Who else, if not the ruler of narcissism himself, Kai Kurenai? Shoko's face went red like a cherry blossom in bloom. And Sayuri just stared, envious and a little in awe. She sighed, sipping her tea again. She really did fall for him. Sayuri didn't say the rest aloud. But the thoughts lingered, heavy in her heart. What a reckless kind of love, to love a man fated to die. And yet it was just like Shoko to be reckless. Shoko sipped her jasmine tea, now lukewarm. She didn't flinch at the temperature as she remained oblivious. Her hands stayed wrapped around the glass like an anchor, eyes distant. Sayuri stayed quiet, watching her. Shoko exhaled, long and slow, more like a silent surrender than a breath. She slumped in her seat slightly, her poise slipping as her fingers lightly drummed the glass rim. Her gaze didn't meet Sayuri's. Instead, it stared out over the balcony railing, as if the answer were waiting for her just beyond it. I've never told anyone, she said, her voice soft, almost reluctant. But if you really want to know when it started, it wasn't in Yggdrasil. It was long before that. Sayuri blinked, caught off guard by the gravity in her tone. She sat upright. It was when I was 8, Shoko began, and I had just lost my parents, 4 months prior. To a car crash. It had been sudden and violent. I don't remember much of it. I had lost my safety net, my support system. Her fingers gripped the glass tighter. My grandfather, from my mother's side, took me in. He was a stranger to me. I'd never met him before. My mother married against his wishes and was disowned. I was the child of his defiant daughter, and yet, he didn't turn me away. Sayuri's lips parted, but she didn't speak. Later I was taken to a party he was invited to. Some high society event hosted by a politician. I didn't know anyone. I didn't belong there, I was uncomfortable. I was just, there. Out of place. And alone. Her voice wavered faintly, the memory clawing its way out. I didn't even want to be there. He showered me with love, but I missed my parents. I missed my home. Her eyes dimmed as they glazed over with something heavy. And then, he appeared. Sayuri tilted her head, listening carefully. A boy. Maybe 13 or 14. He came up to me, holding a VR headset. I didn't know him, and I was skeptical. But I was curious. The toy caught my attention. He invited me to play it with him. I followed, being struck in an unknown place without knowing anyone. As everyone stayed with their friends. I wished for a place to belong. Shoko paused, her expression distant, reciting her past. He helped me wear it. Adjusted the straps. Turned it on. The game was amazing. For a few minutes, I forgot everything. Until her breath caught. Until I felt someone place their hand on me. From behind and hold me tight. Sayuri straightened in her seat, shocked at the revelation. I froze, Shoko whispered. My heart stopped. And then I heard a scream. A sharp cry of pain. She finally looked at Sayuri, eyes distant. I took off the headset and saw him. The older boy. Holding his hand in pain. And behind him. Sayuri already knew who, him, was by the story now. Shoko's voice grew quiet. He was standing still, black hair and black eyes, his hands locked behind his back, eyes indifferent, cold and detached. Looking at the older boy with disgust. He looked at that older boy like one would look at a cockroach. Her voice lowered. Then he attacked him calmness. He kicked him down and stomped on his face. I didn't know what to feel. I was terrified. But also, she hesitated. Relieved. Sayuri's brows furrowed slightly. Because someone had seen me, Shoko admitted. And done something to protect me without hesitation. Sayuri reached across the table, squeezing her hand gently. He didn't stop even when adults rushed over. It was chaos. But he kept going, as he kicked him in the stomach, unfazed by the stern and horrified faces of the adults surrounding us. It was until she came. Shoko's gaze softened, nostalgic, and reminiscing. She was stunning. A woman who stood out with her beauty. Just like my mother. Beautiful, poised, and intimidating. She held him up by the collar and picked him up. And he didn't resist. Just let her drag him and inspect him for any injury, despite him being the one beating another and not the other way around. The memory hung in the air. The injured boy's parents arrived. They were angry and protective, looking for a way to punish the offender. My grandfather too arrived with the host and another man, the father of the boy who saved me. Who my grandfather addressed as Kurenai. They argued. The parents of the older boy demanded apologies, compensation, accusations flying. And then the host intervened, asking Mr. Kurenai to let him question his son, requesting. As the older boy's parents paraded, seeking my grandfather's assistance. I was angry and wished to tell my grandfather the truth, but I was equally terrified. With my body refusing to move. A slight smile adorned across her lips, hollow and sad. When questioned about the incident, he spoke with a disinterested look. Shoko still remembered the conversation in the night of the party. Father. Mother. I was approached by that boy, as he showed me his VR toy and spoke about a new game he had gotten his hand on, that hadn't even been released in the market. He then took me here and helped me wear it and turned on, an old game. Kai muttered. As he looked over at the older kid with indifferent look. As Shoko watched the older boy protest, claiming that the boy was lying. She watched with fear, as her body refused to move. But when Kai looked over at him, with stern gaze, followed by Kai's mother's intervention, the discussion stopped. As the older boy's parents were implicating Kai's unruly behavior for beating up a kid for such a nonsensical issue. But with his mother's support, Kai continued. After the game started, I was disappointed with the game and was planning to remove it when he hugged me from behind and started touching me and even put his hands on my pants. I had enough of this kid after it. He muttered. Followed by gasps from the surrounding adults and unimpressed look from her grandfather. Shoko still remembered every word he spoke that day. The older boy protested, lied, cried. But Kai's mother held Kai up close and started consoling him of the bad experience he had to go through. But with everyone still staring shocked at the incident, their gaze was drawn to her. Standing there, scared with the VR gear in hand. She could still remember hearing her grandfather call out to her, questioning her of her presence at the location, when Kai had turned to her and spoke to her. Why did you even come here? And why call everyone? I can handle myself and do not need unnecessary meddling from a kid like you. He spoke with a click of his tongue in annoyance. When his mother chided him and approached her. Her grandfather a bit surprised by Kai's answer, but moved on to handle the situation with the host, leaving Mr. Kurenai to handle the situation here. She could remember the warmth of his mother, as she hugged her and consoled for the bad experience she went through, despite not knowing the truth. She had been fighting tears all this time, after losing her parents, living with unknown people, who were supposedly her relatives and the horrible event she had to deal with it. But the hug comforted her, as she patted her back. And Shoko couldn't control herself anymore and let it all out, while his mother comforted her. She cried out, while Kai stood beside his father. Yet, she could hear bits of their conversation, in between her crying. I am telling you, this is why I hate coming to parties like this, father. This was quite a traumatic experience for me, so I beg you to consider against bringing me along to such parties in the future. Their comical conversation did wonders to calm her down. While she spoke a bit with his mother and the party had to be called off. While they left her with a maid that her grandfather had assigned to look after, she looked once more at the peculiar kid who had rescued her and was quite thankful to him. Despite not asking her for it and had protected her, as she heard his mother talk to his father, while leaving. Isn't she cute? I wish if we had daughter, I wish for her to be just like her. As a rare smile adorned the woman. That sent a rare feeling of warmth through Shoko. With Kai's father nodding and his mother pulling Kai along, and she muttered a sentence that changed her life from that point. Dear, don't you think that our Kai would look good together with her? Won't they just look cute together? With Kai adding, I am not interested in love and marriage. Remark. But the single sentence had changed Shoko, as she gave it some thought and pondered over it for days and months on end. Remembering the warmth of his mother's hug, she thought back to that exchange, contemplating on it for a long time, thinking about Kai and how he had saved her. And once again meeting him, later she saw him ace in everything he tried with his good looks. She heard the girls in her class speak about him in the middle school, and before she could realize it, she had fallen for him, a long time ago, just realizing the feeling. Having planned their whole future together. Only for it to come crashing down, after he was diagnosed with terminal illness. Chapter 27. High Hill Cafe. Tokyo, Neo Japan. Earth. Year 2138. Overlord verse. 5 months before the end of Yggdrasil. Sayuri sat staring at her friend, as she yet again got lost in her dreamland. To once again pinch her on her hand, with her wincing, she continued her story. And that's when it happened, Shoko whispered. When I fell. Sayuri stared, and remained silent. I didn't know what it meant at the time. But that was the moment. She muttered, hiding the last part to herself. Sayuri let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. You've loved him since you were 8. And he was 7? She asked, stunned. Shoko just looked away, her lips curling into a soft, pained smile. I suppose. Sayuri leaned back slowly, trying to process it all. Her voice came out quiet. Don't you have a romantic tale, with a hero saving a princess from an evil dragon or a demon king? He is your knight in shining armor. Sayuri muttered, for Shoko to get flustered yet again. Shoko and Sayuri sat conversing, fully immersed in their talk that they failed to notice the time they had spent. When Shoko's phone buzzed quietly against the glass table, she instinctively glanced at it. Manabu. I need your help, ASAP. I and Kai got into a fight, come to this location fast. Her brows creased, thoughts racing. A fight, she wondered, if they were speaking about Yggdrasil. Before checking the location, she was shocked. Sayuri noticed instantly. What's wrong? Shoko blinked, momentarily lost in her own thoughts. Sayuri leaned closer, concern knitting her brows. Shoko. It's nothing, Shoko lied, locking her phone. Just something urgent. I'm sorry, but I need to leave early. Sayuri didn't look convinced. Wait, is it serious? I said it's nothing, Shoko repeated, standing up. Her voice didn't rise, but the urgency bled through her calm tone. I'll explain later. Sayuri watched as her friend bowed slightly, turned, and walked off in a hurry. Walking outside the cafe, Shoko looked over at her car to notice her bodyguard, who also happened to be her driver, sitting inside the car. Miss Hashina, her driver called out, getting out from the car. Shall I drive you? Hand me the keys, Shoko interrupted. He blinked. Ma'am. I'll drive back home, she muttered. But. Also, she said, turning her head with a sweet smile. If you don't want grandfather to find out about that antique statue you broken, repaired, with superglue, you'll stay silent. What? Was all he could utter, before she drove off the car, without him. 15 minutes later. Shoko pulled up near the location, a small, grimy street corner store with flickering signboard. Seriously. She muttered, stepping out. Inside, the scent of alcohol, sweat, and blood hit her immediately. Broken glass crunched beneath her shoes. Tables overturned. Groaning from the corners. Her eyes scanned the room, until she found him. Kai. As he was draped over a wooden chair, and Manabu, standing next to a bleeding cashier and offering him a check. You came. Hashina, he greeted, without looking back. Great. She approached, her tone sharp. What happened? Bit of a situation, Manabu muttered, still talking to the store owner. We had to take care of something. Take care. She looked around at the wreckage. You call this taking care? He shrugged. One of the people we were looking for happened to be here. Her eyes darted to the unconscious men on the ground. Both of you started a bar fight. Manabu sighed. Well, it was supposed to be a discreet questioning, but what about this is discreet, and what happened to him? She questioned, urgency laced in her tone. Someone gave him vodka instead of water. And in his adrenaline rush, he drank it straight without bothering to check. And, you let him drink. Her voice rose. She and Kai had never consumed alcohol, with her following Kai's decision, as she remained oblivious to his reasons. Manabu raised his hands. I panicked. I thought water would come eventually, but, he went drunken master on us, before we could intervene. The only way to stop him was to make him black out. By giving him more alcohol. She muttered angrily. For Manabu to sigh, alas, he turned even more aggressive after it. And in my defense, it wasn't me that came up with the idea. He muttered, looking around at the destruction. Shoko sighed in exasperation, brushing her hair behind her ear, furious. And you called me. You were the only one, who we both know, whom he wouldn't punch, Manabu shrugged. Since he hasn't raised a hand on any woman yet. Kai groaned, shifting as she approached. Hey, she whispered, kneeling. Kai. His eyes fluttered open, hazy, reddened. He blinked, focused, and sighed. You again. She froze. He looked at her, tired and bitter. You appear wherever I go, can't you just leave me alone now? Kai closed his eyes again, as if retreating back into sleep. Stubborn as ever, Manabu muttered, leaning against a shelf. Shoko turned, face still pink. And you look too satisfied. What's with that smirk? Oh nothing, he said innocently. Just noting that I've never seen Kai this docile around anyone. It's kind of cute, actually. Cute. She narrowed her eyes. Relax. I'll clean this place up. I've already settled things with the owner. And, good luck, he added cryptically, helping her ease Kai up. Inside a mansion. Are you sure you don't mind? Shoko spoke into the phone. Sayuri replied through the speaker, anyway, I am going back home. So, I'll send you the unlock code. Just don't snoop around in my drawers. I'm not you, Shoko muttered and hung up. Dragging Kai to the bedroom of the mansion, Sayuri owned, she half-dropped, half-placed him on the bed. He slumped over the mattress like a low-level undead zombie NPC from Yggdrasil. He was completely out cold. Shoko had been a bit confused of her next action, after picking up Kai. Unsure and unwilling to either take him to his or her home. With Sayuri set to leave Tokyo today, she had requested her to use her house, that she had purchased for when she visited Tokyo. Now, after laying him on the bed, she went back to the kitchen, thirsty after the manual labor she had to perform. Arriving at the fridge, she opened the door. Seriously. She muttered. It was stacked. Rows of alcohol cans. The fridge had more alcohol than water. Signing at the lifestyle her friend carried, she drank water and closed the fridge. While, she messaged Azusa aka Immortal Witch to inform Konami about Kai staying the night with his friends from school. As, she also messaged her bodyguard and her maid about her situation, though tailored to match Kai's. And now that she looked around, it was just her and Kai in the house. And they were spending the night, though he was knocked out cold. Flustered at her situation, she looked around, blush creeping up her face. She picked up an alcohol can from the fridge to enter a similar condition as Kai to keep her emotions in check, and gulped it, and drank it in nervousness followed by coughing in between her sips. Unsure of her logic, as she followed his suit. She had wished to fight against her nervousness, but the alcohol just made her even more aware about her situation, prompting her for another. And so, the situation continued with 8 cans, before she tiptoed to the bedroom and lunged on the bed Kai slept, and slipped under the blanket beside him. Before popping open a chocolate she found by the lantern, and ate it full. The moonlight filtered through the windows. As Kai, with barely any semblance of consciousness, felt weight on him. Next day morning, Shoko's eyes fluttered open. Her head throbbed with pain, a reminder of the 8 terrible decisions she made the night before. Her gaze wandered toward the ceiling above, an unfamiliar ceiling. Waking up in an unknown place with her head assaulted with pain, it was a first for her. She slowly sat up, groaning as her temples throbbed harder in response. Her back ached faintly and she looked down. Her body draped with a blanket, and underneath it, she wore no clothes. Her hands instinctively clutched the sheets closer to her chest, her face heating up as fragments of memory leaked back. Memories of last night flashed before her eyes, groaning as she sighed. She flinched and shut her eyes, trying to will away the fuzz. Idiot, she muttered to herself, rubbing her forehead. Why'd I drink that much? She looked around the room, her heart racing faster than she could calm it. Kai. No response. She blinked again, then shoved the blanket off and stood, wrapping herself in the loose bedsheet before scrambling across the room. A quick check in the bathroom, which was empty. Her breath caught. He was gone. He left. Her stomach dropped. A nauseous, hollow feeling. She sat back down on the bed, ignoring the pulsing pain in her skull, ignoring the fog in her chest, her mind echoing with noise she couldn't make sense of. A tug of pain pulling at her heart, as she experienced her heart ache. He left, she whispered bitterly, teeth clenched. Tears threatened to leak from her eyes. She stood up, barely managing her mental state, holding back her feelings. As she walked inside the bathroom and let the cold shower rinse her from the churning feeling she got from her stomach. Before she dressed back up and got ready to leave the room, when she noticed a wrapper by the bedside. She picked it up and remembered from her foggy memory. She frowned, rotating it in her hands absently, intending to toss it, as she could still remember its bitter taste. But her eyes caught the fine print on the back. Her expression froze. Then, wah! Her fingers tightened over the wrapper, her cheeks glowing red. What was this? She muttered under her breath, her voice barely above a whisper. Her calm expression shattered. Her usual grace evaporated like mist under fire. She groaned, cursing her friend for keeping such things around her bed. Her head spun again. Not from the hangover, from sheer, burning embarrassment. She groaned and pushed the thought deep, deep into her memory, slamming the door behind it. Forget it, she muttered. Just forget everything. Pinning the entirety of the blame on the chocolate, alcohol and her friend. While she tried battling the void, pain she felt from Kai's absence. Shoko shook her head of the unnecessary thoughts and entered the kitchen of the house. She walked to the kitchen for cold water, eyes still twitching from the recent discovery. She opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle, and drank a few long gulps. Her headache eased slightly, but not enough to mend her composure. As she turned to head toward the front, but she stopped mid-step. And there, on the sofa, sprawled out like a corpse was Mr. Genius. Dressed and unconscious, without a care in the world. Oblivious to the inner turmoil and guilt she went through, as she blamed herself for everything. She stared at him for a full 5 seconds. The water bottle in her hand felt heavier now. She walked over to him, crouched slightly. Kai, wake up. Upon receiving no response, her lips twitched. Then, suffer. She tilted the bottle and splashed the water. The ice-cold water poured over his face, neck, and part of his chest. Gah! He jolted, slipping off the sofa in one unbalanced motion, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Now half sitting, half slumped against the base of the couch, Kai blinked furiously, his eyes bloodshot, hair soaked, shirt clinging to him. Shoko stood above him, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You were asleep. Thought I'd help. He slowly blinked, his brain still buffering from the alcohol. Help. He repeated dully. With your hangover, she replied coolly. They sat in silence for a beat, with her standing, arms folded. As Kai lived though his memory silently, turning silent the whole time. His face unreadable, as he cursed himself numerous times under his breath. And finally, I am sorry. He apologized getting up. There was a lot of things they wished to speak, but couldn't, when Shoko caught his collar and tightened her grip on it. Surprising Kai, of her action. She yanked him closer with barely any space separating in between their faces, leaving his and her mind a mess. Though, she did not understand herself, or the confidence that she mustered in the instance, but she had to say it. Maybe it was the alcohol, that was still remaining in her stream, as she chalked up to it. Dragging his face close to hers, that was blushing, as he remained docile, unlike his usual self. Looking him up close, he reminded her of their first meeting, when his mother dragged him and how he had let her, without protesting. While he had remained unmoving, unflinching against the stares of everyone before, he stood bravely, punishing the boy who had tried to hurt someone he did not even know, under the gazes of all those adults, unmoving to their stern gazes. A lot of things had happened, that had brought them to this point. He was her first love, and was her only love. And he, unlike her, had no lovers, and hadn't even acknowledged her existence before. She still could remember his puzzled face, looking at her back in middle school, when she had approached him. He hadn't even bothered to remember her existence. There could have been nothing more offensive to her than his clueless face, and pure puzzlement to her name and face. He, unlike her, had not loved anyone, at least from her observation. He had no lovers, with many girls chasing him, he hadn't bothered with anyone. Treating them as kids, he had chased them all away, as he remained unbothered with them. And she had made sure no girl could approach him henceforth, all throughout their school life, much to his joy. Despite the hardships she bore to gain his attention, he treated her as his fan, even offering her his autograph on one such occasion, during a tennis competition. Filling her with anger, motivating her to win the competition at any cost to only end up losing to him in the finals, much to her rage. Yet, she was happy, for him, for he only belonged to her. Her love towards him, blinding her. As she crossed hurdles after hurdles to gain his attention. From her traumatic experience from VR, to try playing Yggdrasil. All of it to spend more time with him. She struggled many times to overcome her trauma, yet when she thought of the opportunity to play with him, spend more time with him, faced with his invitation. She forced herself, as her journey to playing Yggdrasil entailed her love for him, while many devs ended up in the crossfire between her love and her struggle against her trauma. So, for her to find out about his terminal condition, she was reminded back to when she first met him, and his mother, who consoled her. To when she heard about her demise, later that year. She was heartbroken, and couldn't control herself. And the next thing, she knew, she was at his house. So, to not find him, beside her when she needed him the most, she was crestfallen. And now, various emotions raged within her. As, she held his collar, his face an inch away from her. She did not know the future and neither did she give a damn about it, and nor did she wish to let him out of her grasp. She threw the remaining of the rational part of her mind that warned her of the consequences of her action today, out of her mind. And took a deep breath, before pulling him even closer, as she felt his breath on her neck. Inching closer to his ears, she spoke, with no regards to the sensible part of her mind that tried rationalizing every situation. You, my dear Kai, are mine, and I am yours, for now and forever. Do not even think about running away, even in death, you belong to me and only me. Her breath falling on his ears, Kai stood like an idiot, unable to comprehend his situation. He had wished to speak, but no words came out after looking at the sharp look she gave, paired with her serious face. Her eyes appeared darker than they usually appeared, as if trying to suck him in. His gaze met hers as she pulled him in, closer than breath. Looking her in the eye, he lost his strength, as he felt the weight of her words, and the way she put more effort to some words. Time slowed. He could see the delicate tremble of her lashes, the glossy sheen riding her pupils, the way her stare never faltered, not for a heartbeat. It was as though he'd become her entire world, and her eyes made sure he never forgot it. Her grip was nothing compared to that look, that threatened to devour him whole. He was reminded of their first meeting, when she saw him with those fearful eyes, albeit with a bit of hope and trust after he beat up the boy and protected her and her dignity in front of those strangers. He was met with conflicted emotions, rationalizing his behavior to be unacceptable, though they were both in their late 20s, without counting his previous life's age, which was nearly 20. Met with such an unprecedented event, his mind went haywire, when he felt the soft sensation of her lips against his. He sighed, as he lost his strength. Letting fate dictate his life, and he would be lying if he didn't fell a bond with Shoko, after their close relation and with the time they spent together, including the 12 years inside Yggdrasil they remained close, though he would argue if it was love that he felt toward her, but the closeness he felt with Shoko was undeniable to him. In his previous life, it hadn't even been long before he had turned adult and joined college before he lost his life and the one he loved to forsake him. Despite the one-sided love he shared with her, he was heartbroken when she introduced him to her boyfriend. Now, he wasn't sure of himself. He remained oblivious to the decisions he needed to make, with the end of Yggdrasil closing in. Yet, he was sure the bond they shared was special, though not fully love to be classified as love in his mind. He still fought against the situation in his mind, remembering the night before, hearing her say, "A clap needs two hands." And he was sure of it, he hadn't been forced into it, the previous night. With both of them, intoxicated with alcohol, with him consuming a suspicious-looking chocolate, after laying down on the bed, all alone. Before Shoko had walked inside, and had consumed a similar-looking chocolate, after him, he could recollect with his hazy memories. Cursing his friends, Shining Knight and Wandering Soul, for their contribution to find himself in this situation. Despite his agony, the countdown for Yggdrasil continued. Chapter 28. Muspelheim. Yggdrasil. Earth. January of year 2138. Overlord verse. 3 months before the end of Yggdrasil. Agartha. The eternal flying garden of Utopia, Avalon. Kai sat reclined on the obsidian throne perched atop the highest balcony of his castle in Agartha, inside his guild base. His gaze was fixed on Deicide, his pet that now flew around his castle. His pet was bigger than his whole floor in its true form. Yet, now in its shorter form, it was as big as windmills. But Kai's mind wasn't on the dragon either. His attention had been focused on the audio feed he received from a phone call, though his console. The caller had been Shoko. Ryuga, she muttered, her voice carrying the coldness. I understand that you and your brother don't see eye to eye. But to not visit him even once after he's been admitted. And not even informing him about your wedding. Kai watched the feed in silence, fingers drumming on the gilded armrest of his throne. As he listened on the call, as Shoko confronted Ryuga, his brother in his office. He wouldn't have come even if I invited him, Ryuga shot back, voice dry, carrying that same arrogance Kai himself sometimes exuded. Besides, we're strangers. Have been for years now. That's your justification. Shoko's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp. You've given up on him because of some childish grudge. It's not a grudge, Ryuga countered, smirking bitterly. It's realism. Kai lives in his own world and always has. Do you think I don't see his all-knowing smirk, the way he looks down on us? To someone as great as him, we aren't even worth his time. With his obsession to some game. He muttered. Shoko stayed quiet for a breath, but her fingers tightened around the helm of her dress. It's not obsession, she finally said, voice softer but far colder. It's resignation. He accepted his fate long before any of us did. Exactly, Ryuga sneered, leaning back into his chair. That's why I didn't tell him about the wedding. He's already written us off. He treats life like a formality. Moreover, for someone as mighty as him, why does he need us? Kai exhaled hearing his brother's replies. He didn't think the enmity ran so deep. After being hospitalized, he had spent all his time in Yggdrasil, just wishing to not die before Yggdrasil. With him bound, unable to operate anything, rather than lying on a bed, staring at the hospital ceiling, he had escaped to Yggdrasil. With his wish to operate everything within the game, he had paid Kayaba and his team, handsomely for replicating items that function as his computer, console, mobile and tablet inside the game. Though, they remained oblivious to what use could those items provide inside a dying game. His lips curled slightly at his situation. It was only a matter of time, before he would unleash himself upon the new world. His gaze shifted from the screen to Deicide, the massive eastern dragon circling the castle sky. He couldn't help but feel excitement for the future, after the end of Yggdrasil. As his mind wandered back to the conversation he had with Shoko, after she witnessed a scar on his back after waking up. Their relationship making some progress, as Kai fought with himself on the implications of their relationship. And he had to admit, she really did drag me around a lot after the incident. Pulling me along everywhere, cutting our game time, by nearly half. He mused, with a rare smile, amid the chaotic turn his life took. It was in one of those days, that he had shared with her about the dream, he had, hiding the Yggdrasil and Overlord part from her, excluding his reincarnation. The dream, where he found himself stranded on a suspended bridge, between two mountain peaks, with abyss sprawling below. Though, he hadn't shared all the details of the dream, just the part where he woke up with injuries from the dream, but that they would heal after a while. As for the dream, he was happy with the progress he had made, as he could see the end of the bridge, albeit the damaged structure of the bridge barely holding on. As he walked the rest of the route, with end in sight, he had hope. But to witness her crestfallen look, while Hall laid on a hospital bed, he shared the information about the new world, though he had remained indirect while sharing his information. Unable to look at that disheveled figure of hers, he shared the information of New World, playing it off his dream. He remembered how she hadn't given it much thought at the time, but paired with that weird dream, she did ponder about it. Added with the dream, he narrated about the New World he had witnessed in his dream before the launch of Yggdrasil. When he was even unaware of its existence. A dream, that he narrated to her, where he had dreamt of a giant majestic dragon casting an unknown magic that summoned unknown items from a giant tree, that was on the verge of death. The giant tree withered as the items and structures flew off through the tear in space. All of them arriving in an unknown world, inhabited by various races, ruled by dragons. The structures he saw in the new world, beings and magic he had witnessed in that dream. He described to her about the magic and the items he witnessed in the dream, present in Yggdrasil. The players he found in Yggdrasil, who had appeared in his dream. There were too many similarities, explaining her the reason why he had stopped them from barging in on the guild raid on Ains ul Gaun by union of 8 guilds. For he had witnessed the guild base of Ains ul Gaun in the New World, before Yggdrasil, and how he was able to confirm their existence, while playing Yggdrasil. All of it had sounded too far-fetched to her, yet she was hopeful of such an opportunity in this dystopian world. Shoko had witnessed a wound, a cut disappear of his back. And yet she found it all hard to believe. He sighed softly, eyes on the spiraling deicide. Shoko's voice continued from the console, her tone softening after the long argument. Ryuga, he has many flaws, but not loving his family isn't one. He cares for his loved ones. Kai's lips twitched, barely a smile. Unable to understand why she loved him or fought for him. Her love too much for him to bear, he doubted if whether he deserved it. The conversation between Shoko and Ryuga had reached its boiling point. You don't even try, Ryuga, she muttered, crossing her arms. You just ran away from him. Her words weren't soft. Shoko had always spoken directly, when she didn't care for the other person. But her patience, stretched thin by his evasions, finally snapped. You think staying away is love. You think cutting him off is compassion. Ryuga's fingers twitched. His eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a thin line. But for once, the usual smirk wasn't there. Instead, something else cracked through the facade. With a sudden motion, Ryuga's fist slammed his desk, unable to take it any longer, startling Shoko. While Kai got worried by his action. Tears streaked down his face. His breathing grew ragged, uneven. What the hell do you know about it, Shoko? His voice cracked with grief, laced with rage. His reaction confounded Shoko, as she remained silent. Ryuga's shoulders shook, his lips twisting into a bitter smile as the tears kept falling. You could never understand, Ryuga muttered, choking on the words. His voice cracked again, but this time he didn't stop himself. You don't know what it was like for me. For me, he wasn't just a brother. He was my idol and my inspiration. Shoko's eyes widened slightly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Ryuga continued, his gaze hollow, looking somewhere beyond the present. Somewhere deep in memory. He was much more than an idol, a perfect being. A genius and the prodigy of Kurenai. He could do everything. Everything. His fists clenched over the table, knuckles white. There was nothing he couldn't do. He was my pride, Shoko. His lips trembled as he whispered, I was proud just to be his brother. Shoko sat frozen, her usual sharp rebuttals lost. Kai, on his end, closed his eyes. So, when that perfect being decided to tear down his own shrine, what do you think that did to me? Ryuga's voice grew quieter now, but the bitterness stayed. The wall of fame, that we kept in our house, dedicated to him. Photos, trophies, medals, all his achievements. He destroyed them all in rage. I idealized him, I wished to be a fraction of what he was. Kai's mind conjured the image instantly. His own hands smashing the glass of the display. Shards littering the ground, golden medals stained with his own blood after he'd punched through the frame. I watched him destroy the shrine like a madman, Ryuga whispered, voice cracking again. And to me, back then, my whole world came crashing down. Shoko lowered her gaze, her throat tightening. You can defend it all you want, Ryuga continued, say no one's at fault. But to me, to the boy who grew up idolizing him. He swallowed, his voice trembling. It was like watching my god fall. I wore his achievements as a badge, proud to be his brother. Everywhere you go, in school or parties. Everyone spoke about my brother. The silence that followed was heavy. It was definitely not something neither he nor what Shoko had expected. He was honored that his brother thought so highly of him. To be idealized by his brother, and him not seething with jealousy upon comparison drawn between brothers. I am happy that he idolizes me, but isn't it bit too much devotion? Kai wondered, hoping to at least rectify before the end of Yggdrasil. I respect my brother. Ryuga muttered, softer now, eyes misty and distant. I love him as my brother. But what can I do, Shoko? The world's unkind. Even though, Shoko was stunned into silence. But Ryuga wasn't done. Do you think I don't know? His lips curled into a bitter smile, his tears still fresh. Do you think I don't know that he transferred all his assets to me? Shoko looked up, eyes widening slightly. Her throat tightened, but she said nothing. All of it, Ryuga continued. His company shares. His properties. Everything tied to him and the companies that he started as his side projects. He chuckled softly, the sound devoid of humor. He left a house and some stocks for Konami. For loyalty, I guess. But the rest. He let out a breath, voice breaking again. He wrote it all in my name, as if he has given up on life. This was the first time he'd heard Ryuga speak his mind, and it had been quite shocking to him. Families are quite complicated. And I still can't understand how Ryuga came to treat me as a god. Kai muttered, sighing at his fate. Asterisk. Chapter 29. Muspelheim. Yggdrasil. Earth. January of year 2138. Overlord verse. The day of the end of Yggdrasil. The eternal flying garden of Utopia, Avalon. Kai exhaled softly, watching the endless dark red skies of Muspelheim stretch above him. Flames and smoke curled in the distance. His gaze drifted over the barren volcanic wastelands, as he pondered about the conversation between Shoko and Ryuga. With 4 hours left to Yggdrasil's server shutting down, Kai hurried. He stood atop the final ledge, looking down at the cave entrance nestled deep within the heart of Muspelheim. At least, he mused, I'm thankful this guild base remained undiscovered till the end. Kai stepped inside the cave. Traversing the Lavalet corridors, he ventured down every route branching from the central cross-section, collecting the loot they had placed to interfere with detection skills and to divert players' attention, and with them the golem they had set up to defend the loot, in each of those chambers. After making his rounds, he returned to the central intersection of the cave. His fingers danced over his console, activating the preset teleportation spell engraved into the ground, not bothering with removing the extra traps they had set. A pillar of light enveloped him, and he found himself inside a dark hole. Moving out, he stepped inside a cavern with his guild base hovering above, as he across a lake and started his work to collecting all the items they had set up in the place. He silently gazed at his guild base, mumbling his guild name, Vanitas Regnum Anta. He mused, the kingdom or realm of vanity at the end. After his hoarding mission, he walked inside the golden door, by the lake. Kai enjoyed the view of the garden, as he walked through it, enjoying his small walk. Reminiscing the past, as Ryuga after his confession had played Yggdrasil with him. They had played as brothers, raiding on a dungeon of a dragon with Shoko. As they mended their fractured relationship. With Shoko aiding them in the raid, he had nothing to worry about with her God of Yggdrasil build, meant to challenge and create an upfront as the protector of Yggdrasil against the world enemies. After using the world item, Fruit of Yggdrasil, she gained God of Yggdrasil class and gained the strength to rival world enemies without any demerits that comes with the strength rivaling world enemies. He happily mused. His lips curved into a subtle smile tinged with melancholy. He sighed, remembering the debate they'd had months prior, when he convinced her to use the Fruit of Yggdrasil. I suppose I pushed her into it, he thought, eyes narrowing slightly. For a moment, he wondered if he had been selfish, worried about her safety in the new world. Though it did worry him, with her hospital visits and game time decreasing, he wondered if she was busy making things right with her loved ones. He was worried if he had burdened her with the decision, where she couldn't reject him. Worried if he was forcing her to leave this world with him. As she was supposed to come in an hour, he hurried. While he worried for her strength against possible world enemies or raid bosses that could appear in the new world, with the possibility of them carrying world item, who were yet to be discovered and defeated. From what I know, he mused silently, there are only 4 world items that grants the players, the strength rivaling world enemies. He thought back to them. The first is the Fruit of Yggdrasil. Grants the God of Yggdrasil class. With no demerits. It's a singular, Ontimos item meant for the world champion. Where it grants them ultimate skills and changes their job role and upgrades it, granting them strength rivaling world enemies. He mused, as Shoko had used the world item. Only world champion class players can challenge her for the role to take possession, or rather to inherit the role of God of Yggdrasil. He pondered the details. Second, the Fruit of the Fallen World. A world item that allows a player to replace any world enemy after surviving 10 minutes in direct combat with one. He mused, as he had already used it, last month. To remain clear of the players that could target him. Third, Fallen Dreki's Heart, it lets a player pick the forbidden race of the ancient true dragon. Which I am in possession of. It was quite a painful event, but this item made up for all the hardships we faced during the event. He mused, happy at the item sitting in his inventory. And fourth, Ymir's blood. That one still hasn't been found. So, there's not a lot of information known about it. Kai sighed, holding himself from finding it through Kayaba or any other dev. After he had shared his dream and existence of New World with Shoko, all her action had started affecting his dream. Or rather after their coitus % reference, her action affected the condition of the bridge. And with the end in sight, upon inspecting the barely holding bridge, Kai had decided against using Kayaba or any other dev to find the world item and had given up on it. He didn't wish to give up on everything for a world item. To fail after coming so close, would have been foolishness. And with its existence known to him, he could wait for it in the new world, it was destined to arrive at some point. Shaking his head of the distracting thoughts, he had arrived at the door leading to the castle. He stood by them and opened them using his guild ring. To remain cautious, he had destroyed the previous rings and created new rings for his guild, just for him and Shoko. Kai entered through the doors, the first floor of his guild base. It was same as when they had arrived here for the raid. He walked through the castle, admiring the interiors, as the painting of the knight battling the red dragon had been replaced by the guild's flag. He soon entered the Hall of Stars, as they had named it, present in the basement of the castle, and retrieved the replica of his guild staff. Kai opened the door leading to the further floors, present in different pocket dimensions of the guild base, the former floors of the Knights of Avalon, now modified as different floors, to be passed as layers before arriving at the last floor, inaccessible by normal means, where he stored world items. With the floors of the guild increased to the limit of 15, by expansion pack, Kai was quite happy with what had become of his guild base. Kai stored the replica of the guild weapon and entered through the door to the second floor of his guild. Second floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Nation of Disorder. Kai walked inside the floor, to be greeted with a maze. Clearing his way through maze, he arrived at an ancient temple, filled with vines and overgrown tress, as roots lay sprawling through the ruins. As his journey remained free of any traps, defense mechanisms set against intruders and of the monsters placed on the floor to defend the base. Kai admired the beauty of the temple, an exquisite design created by the best of talents he had hired to add as much details as possible and making it more grandeur. He entered the temple, without bothering with the golems set at every step of the temple, as he made it to the heart of the temple, uninhibited by the numerous traps laid across the temple paired with monsters and golems. At the heart of the temple, Kai entered inside the giant building with a dome, standing off against the 72 demon golems carved and made of caloric stones disguised as angels, with the giant statue of a god at the end of the chamber. The whole chamber design, inspired from the double dungeon of solo leveling. The floor guardian of the floor, architect. A masterpiece of a golem, perfected by Kindred Star, her proud creation. Kai mused, looking up at the humongous golem, that sat upon a throne, unmoving. Though he had provided her with the details, she had worked for a very long time on him, using caloric stone and many other prismatic ores. Kai was sure that the architect could handle pretty much anything, from being able to go toe-to-toe against Shining Knight and Red Thorn, two world champion along with other players of the guild. He had proved his prowess. I still remember Itsuki giving her evil laugh as she watched her golem fight off against the trial run by Shining Knight, Red Thorn and others. Kai mused, as he turned silent for a while, his expression morphing into one of pain, as he remembered the joyful moments he had with both Hitoshi and Itsuki. His eyes clouded, as he reminisced the memories he shared with them. Before he moved on to the next floor. Third floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, City of Calamity. Kai entered the third floor of his guild base, finding himself in an alien city stretching across him, in a distance. He had to first venture through the barren valleys and plains of the Alienic Plain, faced with golems to arrive at the city. This floor is guarded by the monsters from summoning spells and golems designed after leviathans from Thanos' army before entering the city of some alien civilization to be further attacked by golems modeled after Chidori, as they approach the city. Kai pondered, moving through the floor and entering the city. As he headed inside the tower at the center of the city, the only structure that appeared to be left intact. Entering the tower, Kai took the elevator to the top floor and stood inside the top floor, gazing at the city below. The top floor was designed as an abandoned laboratory, with many capsules and computer-like devices placed all around. Kai gazed at the sword embedded inside a cube and smiled, a trap designed to teleport the player pulling the sword and those in the tower, outside the guild, with a 24 hours ban, left stranded outside without their comrades, unable to enter the guild base again to continue the raid, without a world item. The sight put a smile on his face, as he looked at the Leviathans and Chidori in the capsules, while the lab gave of a feeling of a place, where those golems or automatons were created, and Kai along with Kindred Star had indeed made several golems, by automating the work. They had tried replicating their work on computers here along with Wish Upon a Star to ease the process and had succeeded in the process, but with limited resources, their dream of infinite army of golems had been thrashed. Taking a look at the time, Kai once again entered the elevator and headed to the underground. After reaching the basement, he stepped forth inside the dark corridor beyond the elevator, only to be teleported. He got transported to another pocket dimension, designed by dividing the floor in two parts, while the other part that had the door to the next floor, remained accessible only through the tower and his current pocket dimension. He walked inside the pocket dimension, modeled after the dark dimension from MCU, resisting his urge to shout, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. As he looked over at the floor guardian of the floor, Dormammu, and moved to the next floor, after making sure there were no problems. Fourth floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, the Anarchy. Kai entered the next floor after nodding towards Dormammu, finding himself in a floor without any source of light. Taking a look around the floor, he smiled. An archway greeted him at the entrance of the floor, with poles made of obsidian. With black crystals scattered around the floor, adding to the aesthetics. The floor gave of Shadow Realm vibes, as he looked around for the shadow monsters and assassin pack summons littered along with shadow demons, acting as army for the floor. This certainly retains its vibes of a shadow realm, with the floor guardian, Ashborn from solo leveling. Kai mused, walking the barren land, before sighting a black obsidian structure in a distance, leading off to a hill. The dark half-destroyed castle made of black marbles, rocks and black crystals, without any roof, provided quite a view for Kai, as it gave the view of the darkness at the back of the throne. As he walked inside the throne hall, he looked around. Inside the throne room, Ashborn was seated on the throne, with Igras, Beru, Belian, Tusk, Shadow Giant and Jima flanked on either side of the throne, acting as area guardians. When Kai looked over at Kamish, asleep behind the throne, Kai nodded, checking for issues, and moved on to the next floor. Asterisk. Chapter 30. Muspelheim. Yggdrasil. Earth. January of year 2138. Overlord verse. The day of the end of Yggdrasil. The eternal flying garden of Utopia, Avalon. Fifth floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, River of Eternal Darkness. The next floor Kai arrived at wasn't as grand as previous floors. But it had its charm, as the City of Dead. This particular floor has any interesting floor guardian, defending it with her 3 area guardians, each occupying 3 different parts of the city. Kai mused, overlooking the city that lay down, from the cliff, the door that the previous floor door leads to. Kai jumped of the cliff, landing in the bustling city with undead roaming the city. With his position as the guild master, they steered clear of him, as he raced across the Victorian steampunk-era city, divided into 3 segments. The circular city is divided in 3 equal regions, as the city is designed as a maze, with flying and teleporting prohibited inside the guild base. The players are forced to move along at the levels of the city, as they make multiple rounds of the city to reach the inner layer, walls stationed to divide the city. Kai mused running through the maze. The first region is ruled by the area guardian, Belordius, an undead with Death Knight build, and an OC NPC designed by Zorcius. He was quite adamant about him, with his necromancer build. Kai mused, passing through the first region. Remembering his guildmate, a friend of Zeroth who had joined late, and the strongest necromancer of the guild. Though he left the game due to some family issues, and I had no problem buying his account. He was fairly active and has done a great job with Belordius, though I still fail to understand his fixation of use in everything he possessed. Kai pondered, entering the second region, where the area guardian of the region had been designed by Kai himself, Ibis Necron. He mused, the character from Misfit of Demon King Academy, and much to say Zorcius was quite happy with the rest of the NPCs of this floor. Well, he and Manabu were mainly in charge of this floor, and Zorcius had taken on the mantle to create NPCs, and when I offered him my help, he was a bit reluctant at first, but after I discussed my idea with him, Kai reminisced with a nostalgic smile, he was quick to jump the wagon. Kai soon entered the third region, with Alucard from Helsing, guarding the last region before the giant castle, and the residence of the floor guardian, Arcude Brunnestud. Each region had a speciality mob guarding the region along with the area guardian, with first region filled with zombies, low-tier undeads, death knights and other melee class undead. With the second region home to liches, elder liches, soul eater, doomlord with a couple of undead wise man and some other undead. While the third region was home to shadow pets, elemental skull, eyeball corpse, eternal death, death emperor and empress with pale rider, overlord wiseman, and vampire series summons. Kai was able to reach the castle sooner, without any interruption by summoned monster mobs. He entered the castle, located at the center of the city of the dead. Well, with enough money, there was a lot of things one could do in Yggdrasil, and also buy things in mass quantity, that would have otherwise drilled a hole in others' pocket to buy a single one of them. Kai mused, as he gazed at the vampire princess and the floor guardian of the 5th floor of Avalon. 6th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Tenebrous World. Kai looked around the replica floor, depicting the scenery of Muspelheim or Underworld. The place based on the dimension of hell, home to Mephisto. Kai wandered around the place, moving towards the next floor. This floor, unlike others, doesn't have a floor guardian. Kai mused as he passed by the castles of area guardians, their turf on this floor. With Zarathos and Mephisto guarding the door to the next floor, while Terror Blade guards the entrance to the floor. I do not have much to worry with floor safety. Kai mused, moving to the next floor. 7th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Divine Throne. With this, I should already hold the advantage in the new world, against Ains and other negative karma players. Kai mused, as he looked over at Shoko's abode. Though, he had helped her create NPCs for the floor. The whole floor has no ground, except the floating structures, among the clouds. Kai mused, traversing along the bridges made of gold, connecting different buildings. As he made his way to the end, where a platform was suspended in air, with nothing below except the clouds, where falling takes the players back to 5th floor, as the next batch of summoned monsters are ready to battle the intruders. Kai gazed at the steps that led to the giant white throne, with the artificial sun at the back of the throne. Kai gazed at the empty throne and area guardians, flanked across the platform. Tiamat from Fate stood by the throne, beside her stood Gullidistotes from So I'm a Spider, So What? While Quinella from Sao stood on the other side of the throne, beside her the twins, Ishtar and Ereshkigal from Fate. Kai stood gazing at the throne that inspired awe, by just looking at it. When a person approached him from behind. I suppose, you still aren't done with checks. Shoko spoke, walking beside him. Gazing at the throne, she smiled. Well, you can never be sure of everything. Mused Kai, as he looked at her side profile. Shoko smiled at his response, extended her hand. Now, would you not take me along on your rest of the inspection check? She muttered, tilting her head. Kai smiled at her gesture, and locked arms with her, moving along with her. 8th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Key of Light. Kai, after performing his checks on previous floors, hovered above the floor with Shoko, gazing down at the giant forests. With his proxy guild weapon floating by his side, he was able to move past the restriction on flying and teleportation. Though, his new rings incorporated the permission to fly and teleport, but he had safely stored them in his inventory, to surprise Shoko after their arrival in the new world. Just the thought of it, brought a smile to his face. With the excitement coursing through his veins, of the endless possibilities that awaited him in the new world, he checked the time, remaining 3 hours 1 minute and 35 seconds. With enough time left to check the remaining floors, he looked at the floor below, covered in entirety by forest. While a lone tower was placed at the center of the floor, piercing the clouds, where the floor guardian of the floor resided. Kai mused, Laplace Demon, an OC NPC that I created along with Aliath who guards the Citadel at the end of time, the place where my demon resides with Miss Minutes managing the Citadel. And the way to access that place is through the other part of this floor that has been divided. Kai mused, as he gazed at the other area guardians of the floor, Dreamweaver's Abyss, Scion of a Dragon and a Devil, a colossal demonic dragon. Filthy Monarch, a colossal devil. Pale Emperor, a colossal being with white staff. Twilight Giant, the Knight of the Wall with a giant sword and a helmet. 4 colossal beings, spread across the floor. Though their names are different, but they are from her summoned manhwa. Nodding at the colossal guardians, Kai moved to the next floor. 9th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Chaos Sea. The floor had been designed by Kai and Zeroth to imitate a Demon King's dungeon. Kai had used Diablo's dungeon from How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, as the base, while designing the floor. Ah! I still remember her reaction to this place, Kai mused, sighing softly. Shoko's giggles echoed in his mind, the memory still vivid from when she had first visited this floor, playfully calling him the evil Demon King. Unable to bear the memory of Shoko's reaction to the floor, Kai walked past the door behind the throne to arrive on a small piece of land floating in the vast expanse of sky, with the door behind them. Ahead of them was a plain sky, with a small floating castle across them. The door to the 10th floor, placed inside the castle. 10th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Agartha. Kai stepped on the small piece of land, with waterfall cascading behind him and the city that lay ahead, while a suspended bridge made of marble unknown separating them. With the largest floor in the view, Kai moved to the next floor. Past the giant castle at the end, and the floating building with a dome, behind the castle. 11th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Astral Plane. Kai along with Shoko, entered the recreation of Astral Plane from Lord of the Mysteries, as they both observed creatures, scattered across the floor. A few floating in the astral plane, while the rest slept on few pieces of land, buildings, and other structures. Shoko found the creatures that Kai called Pokemon intriguing. But with the time constraint, they moved to the next floor. Creatures that Kai called as his pets. 12th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta, Babylon. Kai entered 12th floor of his guild base, looking over at 12 floating islands. Kai pulled along Shoko to hasten their inspection of their guild base. Kai went through the various floating islands, each serving different purpose, manned by many automatons. He had been inspired by the Babylon Islands from In Another World with my smartphone. The first island was a garden where various herbs, plants and trees were being grown from Yggdrasil. The second island had been designated as a workshop. The third island, an alchemy lab. The fourth island was named Rampart, where defense spells were operated across the floor, as well as the facility where monsters and mercenaries were summoned against intruders. The facility also stored many golems, along with housing the magic item that erected a barrier, encapsulating all the islands. The fifth island, Tower. It powered the islands for their operation, along with storing interface to control and repurpose many different traps and summoning arrays across the guild base. The sixth island, Library. The place held all the information of recipes, items required for creation of various items, potions and other items from Yggdrasil. As well as the research data of experiments conducted by players of Vanitas Regnum Anta, to craft and smith various items and weapons. The seventh island, R&D Laboratory. The place where the guild members in the past used to work on their crafting skills and where Kindred Star designed her golem army. The eighth island, Storehouse. The place where the players stored their failures and other useless items they created. Also, their place to store or dump items. The ninth island, Smithery. The 10th island, Meeting Hall. The place was modeled after Hogwarts. The 11th island, Hangar. Kai and the rest stored their powered suits and other vehicles they had collected in Yggdrasil. The 12th island, Prism. The place in the guild base, where they stored their magic scrolls and potions. Kai extended his hand to Shoko, as they met with the floor guardian, Truth and the area guardians of the Babylon, Azimuth Ben 10, Dr. Jero, DBZ, Baymax, BH6, and Dr. Psychobos, Ben 10. While he left it mostly to the golems to protect the floor. 13th floor of Vanitas Regnum Anta. Outer region, Knowledge More. Kai arrived at the 13th floor, as he looked around the valley with no buildings in sight. Is there a need to complicate things, Kai? Shoko muttered, walking past the illusion cast around a white tower. The region around the tower was in stark contrast to the region outside, as the path to tower was paved with marble and had street lamps, on both sides of the path. Well, this is going to be my home for, forever. And where is the fun in simple mechanisms? Life should be enjoyable. He muttered, both of them entering the tower. Entering the tower, they walked through the corridor, with murals and paintings of guild's exploits decorating both the sides. While, a water atrium placed at the end of the hallway, before a giant pair of doors. Where, Jibril, the area guardian of the floor stood, by the door. Entering through the door, Kai and Shoko were presented with the library, in all its glory. With desks set at the sides, they could access the bookshelves, behind them, as well as the endless flying bookshelves, by flying or through flying disc, from the podium. The flying disc had railing, which looked more of a stand from courts than a means of transport. And sitting on one of the flying shelf, was the floor guardian of the Knowledge More, a platinum dragon, Wisadagnito Grantha, who was currently in his human form. His creator, Immortal Witch. Kai had been a bit confused with her choice, but he didn't object to her decision. While he was interested in her NPC choice and as far as he knew, she had apparently modeled him after her favorite manhwa character. With her working on his secret library, he had given her a free rein. Taking a look around, he took Shoko to his secret library. Inner region, Valley of Arcadia. Stepping out of the library, Kai dragged Shoko along, and knocked on the water atrium right opposite to the library door with his guild weapon. After the knock, the water receded and he jumped to be followed by Shoko. After jumping into the water atrium, they found themselves standing on a circular platform, while the surrounding was covered with thick fog, limiting their vision. They did not have to wait for long, before the fog cleared, and they got the full view of the surroundings. Their circular platform, laid surrounded by 8 mountain peaks, with giant dragons asleep on each peak. The World Worm, dragons from Dota's dragon blood. Kai had set them as the guardians of his secret library. After all, his library contained all the books he had Immortal Witch compile. With the dragons not attacking them, Kai invited Shoko to get down the platform through the spiraling steps leading them down. At the bottom of the hill, was an old tree, with a door on its bark. Inside the bark, was Kai's hidden library that housed books and research papers, thesis on science, mathematics, philosophy, psychology, history, economics, politics, literature, strategy, blueprints of various instruments, electronics, vehicles and many more. Looking at the extensive collection of books, Shoko muttered in awe. You have been getting ready for the new world from day one, haven't you? I suppose you could say that. Kai muttered, looking proud of his work. Shoko smiled at his dedication, and panicked as if remembering some important detail, while Kai stood staring at his collection. Kai, I forgot to hide my letter. Sensing the urgency in her tone, with her panicking, he tried calming her, and questioned her about the letter, to gain more information, before deciding on the next course of action. Which letter? The letter I left for my family. I don't know what will happen, if they were to find it, before Yggdrasil shuts down. Kai tried to think calmly, as he calmed her down. Shoko, it could happen to anybody in such a situation, you should calm down. He tried calming as she nodded at his reasoning. I'll go back and hide it before jumping back in, she muttered. Prompting Kai to look at the countdown, for Yggdrasil server to shut down. 1 hour 7 minutes and 12 seconds. There's still time, you should hurry up. Kai spoke, hurrying her. As she nodded at his suggestion. I'll be back, in a bit. You should check the rest of the guild in the meanwhile, she muttered, before hitting on the logout icon, on her console. Leaving Kai alone outside his hidden library. The end. Drop a comment and leave a review. Be it negative or positive, but make sure to give constructive criticism. Also, if you think you can add anything of value to the FIC, then you are more than welcome to comment. Any thoughts or questions, ask them in the comment section. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can.